At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
The Tory Deputy Chief Whip has resigned from government following a drunken incident.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Friday, the 1st of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
We're live across the whole of the UK. We're on your TV, your radio and online. So wherever you are and whatever you're up to today, you can take us with you. These are your headlines.
Well, the Prime Minister's Deputy Chief Whip has resigned over drinking far too much, his words, on a night out, where he says he embarrassed himself and other people. In his letter to Boris Johnson, Chris Pincher said he was doing the right thing to resign, given the circumstances.
The Prime Minister says the UK is increasing its defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by the end of the decade. This follows criticism of the government's plans to cut nearly 10,000 British troops over the next 3 years.
And we're on your doorstep today. Yeah, we're in the Northeast all day, seeing the sights and speaking to you, our viewers and listeners, to the issues that matter the most.
Yeah, and of course, we are the People's Channel, so as ever, we want to hear from you. Anything you want to talk about this morning, we want to hear your thoughts. gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at GB News.
And there's lots to talk about today. I'm afraid there's still bad headlines for the government, because our top story is that the Tory Deputy Chief Whip, Chris Pincher, has resigned from his job in the Whip's office, saying he had drunk far too much and had consequently embarrassed himself and others.
The MP for Tamworth in Staffordshire is alleged to have groped two fellow guests at the Carlton Club in London's Piccadilly this week.
Yeah, so he wrote a resignation letter overnight and he told the Prime Minister, "I owe it to you to resign." And it's making all the headlines this morning, as you can imagine. Top Tory quits after groping guests whilst drunk at club.
But there's questions now. He's resigned. Should he have the whip withdrawn? So, in effect, should he still be an MP, but not a Tory MP, at least until this is all investigated? Well, apparently not, because he's admitted wrongdoing. They've said, well, that isn't a necessary move.
Yes, it says it was understood that he would not lose the party whip because he has admitted wrongdoing, a Tory party source was quoted as saying last night, which might seem a bit odd to you because if you admit wrongdoing, then you don't pay the consequences. Seems strange to me. And what it is, again, I'm afraid, is yet another embarrassment for the government.
And yet, well, it is, and yet someone getting a bit drunk in a club and being a bit over-familiar with somebody or just a couple of people...
The word groping is being used in all of the press today.
Is that something that would have just happened years ago?
Sexual misconduct. Years ago...
The Guardian's saying sexual misconduct, yeah.
Years ago, maybe it wouldn't... people wouldn't have batted an eyelid. On the other hand, I just wonder whether, morals are slipping somewhere in government. And when that starts to happen, I mean, it happened in John Major's government, isn't it? We had resignation after resignation in the end because of various scandals, and a lot of them were sort of sex-orientated scandals. In the end, you have to look to the leadership and say, what's going on? Why isn't the leader in charge? Boris is busy at the moment, but maybe he should be back home trying to get a grip on what's happening with his government.
Yeah, it'd be great to get your thoughts on this, as to whether you think Chris Pincher should have the whip withdrawn. Does he need to go as an MP? Is his resignation from the whip's office enough to sort this out? I mean, he has...
They always used to say, when you become the distraction, when you start to make too many headlines, that's when you've got to go. The Sun front page, there is Tory whip quits over drunken gropes. It's the front page of the Mail. Top Tory resigns after groping two men. Astonishingly, it is mentioned on the front page of the Mirror, but you'd think they'd have gone bigger on it.
Yeah, you would.
Front page of The Guardian. Yeah. When you become the distraction, when you become an embarrassment, especially as a whip, then isn't it really time to go? I don't know.
Well, let us know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk. And we're going to bring you much more on that throughout the course of the morning, as you would expect. But in the meantime, let's just bring you up to date with some of the headlines. And the Prime Minister is now facing calls to expel former Deputy Chief Whip Chris Pincher from the party after he quit following a drunken incident. Labour's questioning how Mr Pincher can still be allowed to take the whip and says the Conservative Party is mired in sleaze and scandal.
A fatal explosion which destroyed a terraced house in Birmingham last Sunday was caused by an accidental gas leak. That's what an investigation has now found. The blast killed a 79-year-old grandmother and left a man critically injured, whilst homes either side were left shattered with windows and doors blown out.
A mother, stepfather and teenage stepbrother have all been given life sentences for the murder of a 5-year-old boy. Logan Mwangi's body was found in the River Ogmore in Bridgend in July last year. His mother and stepfather will serve minimum terms of 28 and 29 years. 14-year-old Craig Mulligan will serve at least 15.
Millions of families are having to pay an extra £250 a year on energy bills because of poorly insulated homes. Councils across the UK say 3 million households in fuel poverty in England were paying extra because heat is just being wasted through their walls, roofs and windows. The local government association is calling for a redoubling of efforts to insulate homes to help those struggling with the rising cost of living.
Russia has withdrawn its troops from a Ukrainian island in the Black Sea, which it captured at the beginning of its invasion. Ukraine hailed it as a strategic victory and says it drove Russian forces off Snake Island after missile and artillery attacks. The Kremlin, though, says it withdrew its troops as a gesture of goodwill to allow grains to be shipped from Ukraine.
The government is promising to crack down on so-called dead-end university courses. New guidance published today says university adverts must include information on dropout rates and the proportion of students who find jobs upon graduation.
So is it worth going to university anymore? For those sort of courses, anyway. there's always going to be some courses and some people who are very academic where you think university is going to be the right way forward. But for a lot of people, is it really the answer now with all the debt you can accrue?
Oh, terrible debt too.
And not that much more chance of a job at the end of it. I'm beginning to wonder, got to be honest, whether apprenticeships, paid apprenticeships, where often they will put you through university anyway and pay for it, is the way forward.
It is the way forward, isn't it? And I think that's where we should have put our money years ago, instead of turning all those polytechs into universities and making everybody feel as though they had to go to university, and that was the thing to do. And then a lot of youngsters finding when they got there, they weren't quite sure what they were paying for.
Yeah, it's interesting because I went to... That all changed in 1992, and that's when I went to university. I went to what was Nottingham Polytechnic and became Nottingham Trent University and did a broadcast journalism degree, which was the first one of its kind in the country. A vocational degree, maybe an apprenticeship would be better, but there weren't apprenticeships in that at the time.
Well, no, but that's exactly how I got into journalism. I did an apprenticeship. I was working for the Bridgewater Mercury, which was a weekly newspaper in Somerset, and they paid for me to go to college and do all of the training, and they paid me to do it. They paid me instead of, because I was also doing a job and learning how to be a reporter, and I was being paid instead of having to pay for the education.
Yeah.
It worked. It was brilliant. And I don't think it's done anymore, because now to do journalism, you have to go to university.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, to do nursing now, you have to go to university. And that's not to do down the degree that you get. But do you really have to go to university to do nursing? To
do it, and all the costs that are associated with that. I mean, thankfully, I didn't have to pay. I got a grant to go. But, I mean, that was in the good old days.
Yeah.
I know.
I tell you what, you've got to be careful about doing down some university courses as well, though, because I remember a few years ago, everybody was going on about, these ridiculous courses you can do. I mean, there's one in golf course management. Do you remember that?
No.
There were a couple of
universities
offered in Klingon. That's a bit different, isn't it? But golf course management, then people were getting very snooty about it and saying, why on earth would you? And then I interviewed a young woman who'd done the degree in golf course management, and she got the most fantastic job going all over the world designing and managing golf courses.
But was she the exception rather than the
I don't know. Interesting, isn't it?
Because it's when you're spending... Who were we talking about? Oh, it was Ellie Costello, when I was on with her one weekend when you were away. And she'd come up with like 70 grand's worth of debt or something.
Yeah. I mean, all my boys have got huge amounts of debt after going into university.
It's crazy.
And I know at least one of them would say, no, in fact, probably two of them would say, waste of time and money.
Yeah.
And yet because I didn't go to university, I was determined that all my boys would. And I've saddled them with a load of debt, which they will never forgive me for. There you go.
So let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk. And I think we're going to try and reflect on this a little bit over the weekend as well. So do let us know what you think.
Is university always worth it? Certainly, is it worth all of that money?
Yeah, I think its time may have passed for everyone to be going. Now, the Prime Minister says the government will spend 2.5% of GDP on defence by 2030. Now, that equates to about a further £55 billion by the end of the decade.
Which sounds a heck of a lot. The Prime Minister's comments come, of course, as the NATO summit wrapped up in Madrid, with Secretary-General of NATO warning that the alliance must stand up to Vladimir Putin.
Well, Boris Johnson's announcements signal a significant increase in the defence budget for the UK, but it has raised questions about his commitment to cutting taxes and other manifesto pledges.
Well, for more now, let's speak to defence analyst Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Crawford. Good morning there. Thank you very much for joining us. Does this extra money sound good news to you, or is it enough?
Well, it's good news, and because I think the UK defence budget has been diminished considerably in real spending terms over the past couple of decades. My comment would be that it's too little, too late. By 2030, it will barely keep up with inflation, and the requirement for additional defence spending, given circumstances in Eastern Europe, is now, or as close to now as we can get to. Defence spending is notoriously expensive, and it's not something that you can sort of ramp up overnight. So if this had happened 5 years ago, that would have been much, much better. But in the absence of anything else, yes, it's good news.
It depends, though, partly, doesn't it, as to where this money gets spent? Because obviously there's been so much focus on cyber warfare over the last few years, when suddenly we've had this resurgence of ground warfare. So they've got to spend it in the right places, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely right. I think the Chief of the General Staff, General Sir Patrick Sanders, said that you can't cyber your way over an opposed river crossing. And it has to be spent in the right place. And the British Army in particular is too small. Much or most of its equipment is either obsolete or obsolescent, and that's where the money has to be spent. But I come back to my point, it won't happen overnight, and it should have happened 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think it's an army recruitment advert. It may be for all of our armed forces, where you see a robot running along the ground, and then he turns into a man, and the slogan is, "We don't need robots, we need men." And that would buy into the fact that we simply don't have enough. We don't have a big enough army now for changing needs.
And that too is correct, Anne. When it comes down to it, the one thing that Ukraine has shown us is that numbers matter. And victory usually goes to the big battalions. And while there's always going to be a place in the future for robots and autonomous and semi-autonomous weapon systems, the man or woman in the loop is crucial. And if the army goes down to 72,500 personnel, which is the smallest number since Napoleonic times, and which General Sanders has said is perverse at this time in life, then we're going to be in trouble, because we can't do what we should be doing in terms of national defence.
There's an issue, though, isn't there, with recruitment and retention within the armed forces?
Well, there is. Yeah, I mean, retention has always been a problem, because that has to do with conditions of service. And conditions of service in the armed forces is still arguably sort of mired in the practices of the Second World War and just after the Korean War. I think there's a number of things that the MOD needs to address in terms of career prospects, housing, pay and conditions, and also post-service care, because there's a big veterans community out there, and they're not particularly well looked after, because the MOD and the government for years has palmed off post-service care for veterans to the charitable sector. And I firmly believe that there should be a proper Department of State within the government that looks after veterans' affairs, as the Americans and the Australians and others do.
What do you make of the warning or threat coming from the Kremlin now, saying that a new Iron Curtain is descending over Europe?
Well, I think that's true, actually, and particularly if Finland and Sweden join NATO, the Iron Curtain is going to stretch much, much further than it did during the Cold War. And that's bad news for Russia, the Kremlin and Putin. And in many ways, it's good news for NATO, because NATO is going to emerge from the current crisis in Ukraine stronger, more numerous, and better prepared to resist any future Russian aggression, which is exactly the opposite of what Vladimir Putin hoped, I think, when he invaded Ukraine. So he's hoist with his own petard, if you like.
No, fair point. Lieutenant Colonel, we've got to leave it there, but good to talk to you this morning. Thanks very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Interesting, isn't it?
It's terrible, though, isn't it? I was watching a documentary over the weekend. Oh, no, it's the weekend now, isn't it?
Yes.
During the week. And my week's got topsy-turvy. Yeah, I was watching a documentary about how World War I happened. And to be frank, I mean, there have been so many factions leading up to it. Everybody was at war with everybody else before World War broke out. And actually, we have been through a remarkable period of calm. I mean, I know we've had trouble in the Balkans, obviously a terrible war there and everything, but we probably had a longer period of calm than ever before in Europe. And suddenly it feels as though that's now breaking down.
Which is understandable as to then why, in some respects, the armed forces have been pared down. And because why would you spend so many billions of pounds on an army and navy and air force when we're living in peaceful times? But of course, then something like this happens, and we're finding ourselves potentially cord a little bit short, and it takes a long time to ramp that all up again. It takes a long time,
And a lot of money.
A lot of money.
I mean, what's just been announced is a lot of money, but as you just heard there, maybe not enough quickly enough.
And then what do we do about cost of living, tax cuts and all the rest of it, which obviously we all want as well? We can't have it all. What would you rather see? GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Well, we've got lots more to come, including if you live in a home that's not properly insulated, you could be wasting the money you've got.
Morning, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather update. It's more of the same today. Some sunshine around, yes, but most places seeing some heavy showers as well. A bit more of a breeze blowing today, which means the showers will move through a little faster. Keeping our eye on this weather system, that's going to bring some wet and windy weather to the northwest this evening. High pressure is trying to build in from the south, so perhaps not quite as many showers here today compared to yesterday, but it's a fairly wet start across the northeast. That rain slowly pushing its way across the Northern Isles. And then look at that, the showers just break out almost everywhere by late morning. Heavy downpours likely, particularly this afternoon over eastern England and northeast Scotland. Some downpours could cause some problems. A lot of spray surface water on the roads for the Friday evening commute, but not too many for Wales, southwest England this afternoon, turning drier too for Western Scotland and Northern Ireland until here that next weather system moves in, bringing a band of quite intense rain and some really gusty winds picking up through this evening. That band of wet and windy weather pushes into Scotland overnight and then slowly spreads across England and Wales into the weekend. Ahead of it, we'll see some clearer skies developing over eastern England. Temperatures may drop down to single figures in rural areas. On to the details for Saturday, and we're looking at this band of rain crossing England and Wales. Some uncertainty about the exact timing, so if you've got plans, keep up to date with the forecast. It does look as if East Anglia and the southeast will stay mostly dry tomorrow with sunny spells, and it should turn a bit drier in the afternoon for Wales and western parts of England. But this line of rain will be fairly slow moving over the Midlands, northeast England, and then Scotland and Northern Ireland. Again, just that mixture of bright spells, but also some fairly heavy showers. More showers to come on Sunday, mostly though across the north and the west. It does look as if things will turn a little drier and brighter as we go through into next week, with temperatures also just starting to rise a little in the south.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
6:22. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne on your TV and on your radio. I want to know, what are you having for breakfast? What are the kids having for breakfast? How about a bit of beans on toast?
Not Not for breakfast.
Why not?
Beans on toast is a tea time thing.
It can be. It can be a good breakfast, I think.
Never really thought beans on toast in the morning.
Oh, really?
No.
Well, I suppose beans with a
you would have
full
them with
English.
a full English, wouldn't you? Yeah. Oh, okay.
I quite like beans on toast.
Yeah, but beans on toast are becoming expensive, according to Tesco. They're having a bit of a war with Heinz over the price of a can of beans, apparently.
Heinz won't supply Tesco anymore.
No, so when you go into Tesco, you won't find your Heinz beans. You'll probably find other makes. But other makes aren't the same, aren't they? Because beans have always means Heinz, haven't they?
Well, some people say so, others may disagree. I'm just saying that. But anyway, what you don't want is spaghetti hoops.
Now, I am shocked by this. There's a report out saying that, they've surveyed young people.
Yes.
And apparently spaghetti hoops, or as we always called them in our household, bisgetti hoops, on toast, which was a real favourite for all the kids. I've got so many pictures of the kids falling asleep in their bisgetti hoops.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I've got a classic one of my boys who was just in a high chair and he had not been some spaghetti hoops and cut up bits of toast. You know, and he just went...
Name and shame, which one?
It's the little one. I mean, he's 27 now, but
the little one.
It's the little one, the baby Connor.
Well, look, 3 in 10 youngsters have never had the tinned pasta staple, according to The Sun.
It's nursery food, though. It's wonderful stuff.
I never liked it.
I know it's got... Oh, it used to have lots more sugar in it than it has now. And I know it's sort of, just pasta and a spaghetti sauce and everything, but it's just lovely. Spaghetti hoops.
I never really liked it, I've got to be honest.
Did you never have alphabetti spaghetti?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
They're not as... I don't think they're as good, actually,
It's
alphabetti.
exactly the same.
Because the hoops you can catch on your fork.
This is true. I don't know, I just never liked it. Where beans, baked beans on toast...
Heavy going.
Every time.
Heavy going.
Oh.
Spaghetti hoops much better. But anyway, no, what the shock thing is that modern kids don't, well, they've never tasted them. They don't know how delightful it is.
Apparently, what they're having instead? Oh,
don't tell me. Smashed avocado.
No, here you go. No. A third of children aged, I don't know how old they are. Anyway, a third have so far missed out on the classic dippy egg and soldiers.
Yeah, we have Edwina Curry to answer for that, don't we?
How can you not have boiled egg and soldiers?
I was brought up where, again, a classic tea was a boiled egg and soldiers. Yeah, that's right.
For tea?
Tea, yeah.
Oh, no, that was a breakfast thing.
Gosh.
That was a breakfast thing. Maybe we were very posh.
Very
I don't
different.
think we were.
We had it for tea, yeah.
Oh.
And then you dipped your soldiers in.
Dip your soldiers in.
Yeah. And the really good thing was having a mum who could actually get the egg just right.
Yeah.
So that the yolk was still runny.
Yeah, well, you see, unfortunately, my mother did not fall into that category.
It is difficult to do.
She's a bit of a guesser when it comes to cooking.
Yeah.
It's like when you had rice pudding or custard, it was a case of, will it be like soup or will you get a slice of it? It was potluck, absolute potluck every time.
I think I'm a cook like that, as I just chuck it in and hope for the best.
Yeah. Never read the ingredient or the instructions, Mum.
Oh, no, what are recipe books for? Do you know, the funny thing is that when you do follow a recipe, it usually works out.
That's funny, that.
Yeah, it is. Make it up as you go along and, not so good. Anyway, do let us know what you're having for breakfast.
Yeah, not rice pudding.
No. Are you having bisgetti hoops or are you having baked beans on toast, which I think is a tea time meal, but there you go.
Yeah, let us know. Now, 3 million households are paying the price for having poorly insulated homes. Their bills are rising as a result by an extra £250 a year.
Yeah, according to the local government association, without proper insulation, heat is just being wasted through the walls, roofs and windows. Well, to discuss this further, we're joined by property expert Russell Quirk. Hello there, Russell.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. You can always tell this in the winter, can't you? When there's snow on the roofs, you can tell which house is insulated and which isn't by whether or not they've got snow still on the roof.
Yes, true enough, true enough. And look, this is obviously now an ever bigger problem as energy costs have escalated kind of beyond belief and are set to increase still further. And the issue, though, with this, of course, even though there is a saving, is that for those that are familiar with what's called an EPC, which is an energy performance certificate, which has to be issued on a property that's either about to be sold or about to be let, the difference between a property that is poorly insulated and well insulated tends to be in the order of cost involved to invest in that property to get it to be better is thousands and thousands of pounds. And I guess even though that there is now inarguably a very, very strong case for insulating your home better, even if you don't subscribe to the sustainability argument, even if you're a bit of a kind of, a sustainability denier, there's obviously a cost saving. But the issue is it costs a lot of money to get your property into a position where it's going to be more efficient on an annual basis and save you money on an annual basis.
I mean, there does seem to be certainly an argument to say some of the worst insulated homes seem to be those for people on the lowest incomes. So it's a double hit in that way, and begs the question, especially under the current circumstances with the cost of living crisis and the fuel crisis, should the government be doing more?
Well, look, Stephen, I think that's the big question. I think that undoubtedly, when it comes to public housing stock, so whether it's council homes, they do just about still exist, or properties that are owned by housing associations, then obviously the owners of those properties, I think, have an obligation to make sure that they meet modern standards, and certainly not the standards of 20 or 30 years ago. But a lot of the attention this morning on this particular piece seems to be on the government shoring up all homes, a kind of a move to have the government step in and subsidise even private homes. And I have to say, I think that's beyond the pale. I'm not sure that government in some kind of big state move should be responsible for subsidising and paying for better insulation on private homes, the homes that we all own individually. I think there is certainly a huge argument, a significant argument for people that own their own home and have put money into it and that also have equity in their home, of course, more than ever as house prices have increased. I think it's a matter of personal responsibility. I don't see that the government should be stepping in some kind of extinction rebellion type trigger to pay for everybody's home to be insulated.
Nevertheless, I mean, everybody in the country seems to be asking the government for ways to help us with the cost of living crisis. Couldn't this be a cost-effective way? Instead of a government handout, money cash-wise, maybe the government saying, all right, but we will help you insulate your home.
Well, I guess, as you rightly say, they have a lot on their plate, don't they, at the moment? When we've got doctors asking for 30% pay increases and barristers on strike and BT going on strike and postal workers going on strike, that's about to bankrupt the country, sadly, just to kind of make the political point. So I would think at the moment, the last thing on the government's mind is the short-term green agenda. So I suspect politically, this certainly wouldn't be a vote winner. And they have rather other fish to fry, I think, don't they, in terms of the headwinds that are being thrown at them in terms of demands for an extra, many, many billions of pounds in wage increases. So I suspect this will slip down the government's priority list, unfortunately.
Just a thought, Russell, on those private homes being insulated, and if they're not up to spec, I mean, is that going to become increasingly difficult to sell a home then if it's not properly insulated? Is it going to have to be a sort of condition of sale?
I think it's a good point as to actually what the government might do in the future. So it was quite some years ago that energy performance certificate, the EPC that I mentioned, became mandatory if you were looking to put your property on the market. So you have to have an EPC. Whether buyers actually take much notice of whether the rating of the property is a C or a D or an E is another question. But in the future, look, perhaps if we can't persuade the public to voluntarily kind of improve their homes before putting them on the market, then maybe the government eventually might step in, as they are with landlords. So in the next few months, subject to the parliamentary agenda, landlords letting a property will have to ensure that that property is an EPC C rating or better. So it's certainly happening in the lettings market. Whether the government goes a step further and insists that properties that are lived in or properties that are sold also have to be above a certain rating remains to be seen. But again, I think that would be a bridge too far, frankly.
They certainly could when it comes to new builds, couldn't they? Just insist that they have to be very highly rated.
They could, and I don't know why they don't do that, frankly, because there's all sorts of measures that government could insist on with what are called building regulations to make sure that house builders actually build carbon zero homes. And there are some good developers right now building carbon zero homes. And including such things as grey water and solar panels and lights that work on motion and so on. But it seems that the government are rather behind the times when it comes to insisting actually that house builders do anything, particularly actually build the right amount of houses in the right places, as I think we've rehearsed many, many times before on this show.
Russell, good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. You do think with that, certainly with new builds, what an easy way to deal with that as an issue. Certainly where I live, my house was a new build, and within the area I live, the council insisted apparently that it all has to meet all these targets and things. So my house is really well insulated, nothing to do with me. It's just
so when it snows, the snow stays on your roof.
Stays on the roof, and it's not too bad to heat.
Have you ever worked in a place where you have motion sensor lights?
Oh yes.
So you're working away, and then suddenly the lights go out because you haven't been moving very much. Boris Johnson said when he was London mayor, the building he was in used to be like that, and every so often you'd have to get up and wave your arms around just to get the lights keeping on.
It's when you go into the bathroom and you just have to keep walking in until the lights come on. It's a bit disconcerting.
You have to walk into a dark room almost, don't you?
Yeah.
Weird. Sensible, though.
Stay with us, we've got lots more still to come, including a good look at the papers, and we'll be out and about with Rachel Sweeney, who's on your doorstep.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Morning, it's 6:35. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
So, shall we take a look at today's front pages? The Times leads with Number 10's plans to cut VAT to help reduce the tax bill for millions and ease inflation.
The Guardian has the latest sex scandal to rock Westminster after the Tory Deputy Chief Whip resigned last night amid sexual misconduct claims.
The Daily Mail covers those allegations against Tory whip Chris Pincher, who stands accused of having groped two men at the Carlton Private Members Club.
The Eye leads on Theresa May's urges to the Prime Minister to ban trans conversion therapy.
The Express reports on the tragic death of 5-year-old Logan Mwangi, who was murdered by his family despite serious safeguarding concerns.
The Telegraph is going back to politics, those allegations of drunken groping by Chris Pincher.
The Mirror condemns social services for failing to intervene in that tragic case of 5-year-old murder victim Logan Mwangi, who died at the hands of his family.
OK, let's go through some of those with broadcaster Mike Parry and author and broadcaster Nikki Hodgson. Good morning to you both. Good to see you this morning.
Yeah.
Nikki, let's start with the Sun and the Pestminster scandal, as someone's phrased it.
Yes, that hashtag Pestminster, it's back, isn't it? The third time in a few months for Boris Johnson. So Chris Pincher, the Tory Deputy Chief Whip, has resigned because he's been accused of groping some men at the Carlton Club in London. Now, this is the second time that he has resigned, actually, as Chief Whip. And crucially, this is not resigning as a minister. This is just resigning from the position of Chief Whip. So he will still be sitting on the backbenches working in the Tory party.
Yes.
And Boris Johnson has apparently accepted his resignation and said, well, it's fine. He's kind of held his hand up. He said he's done the wrong thing and therefore he can stay in the party. Now, of course, Angela Rayner and the Labour Party are very upset about this, saying that why should somebody stay in power, in a position of power, if they have, allegedly committed sexual assault? So...
Well, allegedly is the key.
Allegedly is the key.
Well, he has admitted it.
But he has admitted it in the letter.
He's admitted being drunk.
And embarrassing himself and others, yes.
So apparently there isn't going to be any investigation on the part of the Tory party, as there would do usually. And what's so significant about this is when you are in a position of Chief Whip or Deputy Chief Whip, it's a pastoral role. So it's really about having the trust of the party members. It's really about caring for people. So, it's not like being an ordinary MP. So that kind of added issue.
It's about control as well, isn't it? It's about controlling members in the party.
So it really kind of throws up a lot of moral questions. And, how many times are we going to get these kinds of allegations and they just kind of be brushed aside? That's kind of the feeling from Labour.
It's all happened so suddenly, because the incident apparently only happened the night before last. So it's right. Now, what I can't find out in this story is, of course, it's all allegations, but are the police going to investigate this as well as the Tory party? And if that's the case, then shouldn't there be a period of abeyance when this man shouldn't have any part in the affairs of the nation because he's under investigation?
Well, there's no indication yet that the police are involved, but perhaps the two men involved,
this is what I'm saying,
involved in this, do not. Maybe it was just something they're brushing off themselves.
Well, that sounds to me like a credible theory. This happened in the Carlton Club. The Carlton Club is the Tory party at play, so to speak, and it's an inner sanctum where very few people get in apart from the upper echelons of the Tory party. But I love this man's letter to Boris. Last night I drank far too much. I've embarrassed myself and other people, which is the last thing I want to do. He doesn't actually get down to the allegations until way down the letter. It's almost like I'm stepping aside because I made an error of judgment and had too much to drink.
Yeah, it's quite cleverly written, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's trying to gloss over everything,
but there is a question. He stepped down from his role as a junior member of the Whip's office.
He did
in 2017.
4 years ago, I think. He's 5 years ago stepped down, but then he got back in.
For having a go at having to get his hands on something.
Again, allegations. So that's the kind of tricky element of it.
And the point is the two gentlemen from the other night did complain to Number 10 about him.
They certainly complained to the hierarchy of the Tory party,
yes.
absolutely,
So they did complain about him. And frankly, it's not up to them whether or not the police want to press charges.
No.
The police have got to investigate.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
If they want to investigate, they've got to.
Yeah, absolutely. But once again, Boris is coming back, isn't he, after 8 days away. Gets off the plane this morning to get smashed in the face with another huge scandal like this. Because it is a huge scandal, isn't it? It's shocking. It's allegedly shocking behaviour, although he admits to being drunk, obviously. But they're piling up now, aren't they? What can I say, lifestyle personality scandals, which he has to deal with.
Sleaze allegations. About the party generally, and it's happened before, and here we go with Tories again.
That's the point. The standard is being set, and it's a lower standard than what we expect of our MPs.
Sorry?
Whose fault is it? When you have a company or in any organisation where these sort of things start to happen more and more and more, you have to say, isn't it the man or woman at the top?
Yeah, the buck stops here, doesn't it? Yeah.
So, what are we saying about Boris?
Yes, but are we getting over the top? Dennis says a few bad apples don't ruin the cart, but the press is focusing on one MP in 300, makes it seem like the entire market is ruined.
But it's not just
one MP. And comparatively, the Labour Party have not had the same amount of scandals. So that's why it kind of,
They haven't had the
goes
same
into relief.
scrutiny, though, have
No,
they?
Well, perhaps, yeah.
Jane says he's not resigned as an MP. Surely his very first apologies and resignation should be to his constituents.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think Labour will pile in on it because in politics you don't pile in on these things in case all of a sudden sitting behind you in the Commons is another scandal just waiting to erupt. I think they have an understanding, don't they, not to try and embarrass each other on these things, yeah.
Yeah. Let's have a look at the Mirror, like from the front page.
A most horrific story. And we have stories like this far too often in this country. Innocent lost in house of evil. Tragic Logan Mwangi died at the hands of his brutally dysfunctional family, including a 13-year-old described as a monster who'd moved in just 5 days later.
And it was the judge who described him as a monster as well.
Well, not only that, but what I don't understand is we have a huge welfare budget in this country, biggest in the world percentage-wise of our gross domestic product, and yet this lad, the one who's been called a monster, Mulligan, right, who was named by the judge because the judge was so horrified at his behaviour, this guy was with foster parents who'd been fostering children for 40 years. And this boy, the killer, the convicted killer, was the first that they sent back to the social services in 40 years because they said, this boy's completely out of control. He does nothing but talk about killing people. And yet, despite that, the victim, young Mwangi, was sent to live with his stepdad, right? His stepdad had also been barred from being alone with children because of previous criminal convictions. And his stepdad, his son and the boy's own mother, between them, then killed the little boy, brain damage, kicking him downstairs, locking him up in rooms for 10 days at a time.
Only 5 days after the teenager moved into the house.
After 5 days after the teenager moved into the house, 5 days of hell. It's just the most horrific. And I just don't understand. You know, once again, right, you get 10 paragraphs down the story, a case review is underway. Case reviews are always underway afterwards, but we need a bit more, you know, proactivity in these sort of departments, social services departments, to make sure it doesn't happen again and again and again.
It's the repetition of these things.
It is.
So upsetting.
Yeah.
It just shows how difficult it is, though, I think, for anyone to be able to walk in and help manage a totally dysfunctional family.
Yes.
And that's what they've often said, you know, there's no stitching up of the services. Somebody finds out a bit of information in one department and then someone else does in a different one, and they don't necessarily feed that information to each other.
Yeah.
So the system is broken.
Yeah, I totally agree. The system's broken because it's too complicated, too big, and has too many people pursuing careers instead of pursuing the benefits of the people that are supposed to look after children at risk. You know, I'm told this all the time by social services departments. Too many chiefs, not enough Indians on the ground knocking on doors. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And too much red tape.
Absolutely.
From taking common sense decisions sometimes.
Absolutely.
What's Theresa May talking about in the Eye, Nikki?
Gosh, this is really interesting. So Theresa May is basically apologising for some of the decisions, votes that she cast when she was Prime Minister around LGBT rights. And she's come out and said that it's very important that we don't backtrack on trans conversion therapy. I don't know if you've kind of followed this story, but there's a conversion therapy bill. It aims to ban all kinds of conversion therapy. Yeah. But when people read through the detail, it didn't protect the rights of trans people as well. And she's kind of come out very strongly and said to Boris Johnson, you must not renege on this. You've got to protect the rights of trans people. Yep. And, you know, Theresa May famously didn't have the best voting record when it came to things like matching the age of consent for gay people and straight people. And, you know, she's kind of come out and said, I was wrong. And I think actually that's really brave of her and admirable.
Decent.
Because it is decent, because you should be allowed to change your mind in politics or in life in general. Yes, yeah. And it should be acknowledged when you do it. So, you know, it's actually a good news story.
Yeah. The reason the I've done this is they've actually got a great feature today. They've focused on 50 years of Pride, OK, 50th anniversary of Pride. So they've actually gone and asked all the Prime Ministers since, Boris Johnson, Theresa May, David Cameron, and journalistically, very cleverly pulled out the best line that they got, and that was Theresa May's, OK? So it's a very, very worthy campaign they've run. There's also a feature here on Peter Tatchell, who, in my view, is one of the bravest men I've ever met, because it's all very well walking up and down Westminster in this country, campaigning for rights. Mr Tatchell went to places like Russia and campaigned there and was beaten up in the streets, you know, by Russian policemen and that kind of thing. So I think if anybody should be saluted for, you know, the advancement that's been made over those 50 years, I think Peter Tatchell's a key figure.
Yeah, I mean, he's an interesting character because he was so controversial, and he sort of barged into the pulpit of the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Yes.
At a time when things were a lot worse here.
That's right, yeah.
So he was one of the pioneers of it all.
Indeed.
Yeah, as you say, very brave.
Yeah, very, very brave
He's also
indeed.
mellowed. He used to be frightening to interview in the olden days.
Yeah, he did.
But that's because he had to be militant.
Absolutely.
Yes, but I remember interviewing him in in the 80s, and he was terrifying to interview actually.
Yeah.
And he's really much more mellow and willing to just talk.
Well, he's brought the world around to his way of thinking.
Exactly.
And that's because, as you
He's a
quite rightly say,
fascinating man.
when we were watching the rail pickets the other day, Mr Lynch was saying, well, we've got to be militant or else nobody will take any notice of us. And Peter Tatchell had exactly the same attitude all those years ago, you know?
There's a terrific documentary about him on Netflix, actually, and what it sheds a lot of light on is the relationship with his family and his mum in particular, who really did not accept his homosexuality.
No, he's Australian, isn't he?
Yes,
and
he's
it was
Australian.
even further backwards
And
there.
now that she's very, very old, you know, they've kind of had this reconciliation. She's really proud of him, and it's just really, really moving to watch because he has done amazing work.
Yeah.
Yes, he has.
Yeah, indeed.
He's quite a character. Let's have a look at tax cuts.
Yes.
In the Times. Are we going to get all big tax cuts, Mike?
Well, never mind looking at tax cuts. I want tax cuts, OK, per se. And I'm not being selfish here. I want the economy to be rebooted, and you can only do that with tax cuts. Cutting VAT is not my favourite form of a tax cut. Why on earth did we go ahead with the national insurance rise, OK? Why are we still...
Well, the argument with the national insurance rise is, although the figure went up, they also significantly raised the level at which you start paying it.
Yes, OK, but that's countered by the fact that people in fiscal drag have been dragged into the higher tax band, so that's cancelled that out. They're refusing to look at the green levies. Surely, I'm not saying scrap all green levies, but have a look at them, because that costs you. And I don't know where Rishi Sunak's getting his philosophy from these days. He's supposed to be a Tory Chancellor. He's already announced that corporation tax is going up to 26% next year and keeps promising, don't worry, I'll bring some tax cuts. Mr Sunak, if you're going to give us tax cuts, give us tax cuts now. This VAT one is being opposed by some people in the Treasury who say, no, can't give money back to the people. Oh, why not? Well, that'll cause inflation. Are you mad? We're in the midst of terrible inflation, and one of the problems is because supply and demand is out of kilter. Give people back their money.
What are they going to drop it to?
They haven't said. They haven't said. They're just talking about cutting VAT to 17.5% from its current 20. Cuts would cost the government about 18 billion. 18 billion's not much, is it, in terms of what we spent over the last 3 years?
They were going to cut VAT just a week or so ago.
Exactly.
They keep flip-flopping about it.
And that's what I'm saying.
Is it too little, too late? I mean, I know what they're doing. They're drip-feeding this information into the press to try and keep the public on side, but people can't wait till next year.
No, that's what I'm saying. Why not do it now? Because if you do it now, you'll immediately people will feel better. Exactly, the
and I'm more likely to vote for you in the next election whenever it's coming.
Exactly, but they have dragged all these people into the higher tax band. A total of 6.1 million people now pay the 40% rate of income tax. That's astonishing.
Does it say at what point that kicks in?
40%. Sorry, it's the... Is it 39,000 or something like that?
I think it's gone up a bit from that.
Yeah, it's around that figure.
40,000.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we forget, don't we? 20% VAT.
Yep.
It was 15% not that many years ago.
That's right.
And then they upped it to 17.5. Then they upped it again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't see why they can't drop it down to 15%.
Exactly. I'd blame George Osborne for a lot of all this, you know. I thought he was I thought he was
gets away with it.
I thought he was a shocking chancellor, honestly, you know. He poured taxes onto property and stamp duty and, to me, nobbled the economy altogether. And now... Tory chancellors don't believe they have to give the money back to the people. They want to spend all our money, and we're so in debt. I can't believe that we can't stimulate the economy.
Mike for Chancellor, I say.
I'd get there, believe me.
Yeah. What about royal bullying in the Telegraph?
Oh, my gosh. So do you remember there was that bullying report about the Duke and Duchess of Sussex? I mean, it seems a long time ago now, doesn't it? Because it feels like
it's
we've
Sussex.
moved on.
It's about Meghan and whether or not she was a bully.
It was about whether she'd bullied the staff when she was here. And apparently both Buckingham Palace and Meghan and Harry have kind of agreed to not talk about it anymore, which is quite an unusual move, actually. But it sounds like there's maybe some kind of reconciliation coming.
Well, is it a reconciliation or is it just Buckingham Palace deciding that it's easier if they don't publish the report because things are difficult enough with Harry and Meghan?
Yes. Yeah. I don't think they want that to be the legacy, you know, when you know the Queen's maybe not that well.
I think they're scared of what they might provoke.
Perhaps they are.
And I think you're spot on. I think this one has been swept under the carpet, you know what I mean?
Because it's just too awful.
Well, did you see the other day that Harry and Meghan were pictured again with Oprah Winfrey? So there's now a fear inside Buckingham Palace there's going to be Opera 2, OK, following their visit for the Jubilee celebrations. The only problem with sweeping under the carpet is everybody's now under suspicion, aren't they?
Yeah.
You know, if they would publish the report, then we'd know exactly what the allegations were and how solidly they've been stood up. But we don't. We say, oh, no, they're not going to publish it. We're happy now. I think Buckingham Palace are also frightened that it might reveal that the procedures that they had before Meghan arrived were completely unsuitable for the modern royal family and you know, in terms of service.
But if they were victims of real bullying, then it's not fair to them to let the report
It's completely unfair, and it's completely unfair that
they've had to sign non-disclosure agreements, as you do when you work for the royal.
They have, and now everybody's under suspicion. So, in a sense, I think Meghan's come out of this probably better than anybody because there's no new stories being written about her being a not very nice person, if that's the case, you know?
Yeah. OK, look, Mike, Nikki, thank you very much indeed. We've overrun.
Oh.
So I'm gonna suggest that we drop the headlines. We were going to run you through some headlines, but I don't think we've got time because if the gallery can catch up with me, just because we need to go on your doorstep. And talk to our North East reporter, Rachel Sweeney. She's in Newcastle upon Tyne for us this morning. Morning, Rachel.
We've caught her unawares, I think, haven't we?
Oh, she's
still having
dropped
her
out.
breakfast. She's still having her breakfast. Sorry about that.
Oh, she's back.
Oh, no, she's not.
Here we are, Rachel. Morning.
Rachel.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me okay, guys?
Yes, we can. We can.
Well, let me tell you where I am. I'm in Tynesyde's most creative corner. It's called Ooseburn, and it's packed with these studios. And inside them are poets and musicians and artists. And it's just such a cool, trendy place. And we just must knock on one of these doors and have a look inside. Let's go into Powder Butterfly. Good morning, you're live on GB News. Do you want to introduce yourself and your business?
Hiya, I'm Corinne and my business is called Powder Butterfly and I'm a designer and I produce location-themed gifts, a lot of them inspired by the North East. Everything's made in Britain, which is a passion of mine to find amazing British suppliers. We've got things like the pin badges and the key rings, which are made in the Jewellery Quarter in Birmingham.
For our radio listeners, we are in this spectacular studio that's packed with monochrome gifts, and you are on brand yourself.
I am. I had to be. I design in black and white and I use a bit of gold, so I had to be in the brand colours today.
And you have this fantastic Angel of the North necklace on, and the Angel of the North is quite special to you, isn't it? Tell us why.
Yeah. I moved to the North East in 1998, which is the year that the Angel was installed. I moved up here to study photography, and ever since then it's just been had a special place in my heart. This has actually got a colliery map on, and I love the industry in the North East as well, so it's been important for me to incorporate the heritage of the area as well as the Angel.
Do you know, in 1998, someone once gave me a bit of scaffolding from the Angel of the North when it was built, so I feel an affiliation with it as well. But it's not just the Angel, is it, that you specialise in? There's a lot of Tyne Bridge memorabilia.
Yes, I love the Tyne Bridge. Obviously, I travel over it every day from Gateshead to get to Newcastle to my studio. The other landmarks we include are Millennium Bridge and Baltic, but I've also got other collections for Durham. I've got Saltwell Park, which is right next to where I live, so different places that really connect people. And, you know, I've been doing this for 10 years now, so it's my 10th anniversary this year.
And on your 10th anniversary, you're dealing with a cost of living crisis. How has that affected your business?
It's massively affected it, I would say, but at the same time, it's given me an opportunity to pause and rethink and do new things and innovate. And I found out an amazing statistic recently that for every £1 spent with a local business, 63 pence goes back into the local economy. So if you can spend the price of a coffee with a business once a month, you'll be having a really positive impact.
Corinne, thank you so much for having us. I'll be looking around Ousburn for the rest of the morning. Do join me in 1 hour for some more On Your Doorstep.
Lovely stuff, Rachel. Thank you very much indeed. I love the Angel of the
Me,
North.
absolutely brilliant.
I mean, isn't it funny? Because it's such a
very
sort of weird
moving,
thing.
but it's just so big and wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful to see.
I remember years ago walking up to the bottom of it, and just the scale of it.
It was very controversial when it was first put up there. I think a lot of people didn't like it, but I think a lot of people then have grown to like it because it just dominates the skyline. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and it is just a strange statement, but it just works. So I'm not all into this dead arty-farty stuff, as I would say.
I like public art, a lot of it.
But that works.
Yes, it does work. Yeah, it's lovely.
So there you go. But I can be very sceptical about these things.
Have you ever seen the Kelpies?
No.
Oh, I'll tell you all about the Kelpies next hour. We're running out of time, aren't we?
I've had a dose of that, I think.
The Kelpies are these wonderful spirits of the water, and they come out as horses. And it's been built up in Scotland. These amazing horse heads. I mean, they're massive. They're as big as Angel of the North, I think.
Really?
They look wonderful. Absolutely brilliant.
Ooh.
If you've got a picture of the Kelpies, send it in.
Yes, please. gbviews@gbnews.uk. We're back in a couple of minutes.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
The Tory Deputy Chief Whip has resigned from government following a drunken incident.
Good morning to you. It's 7 o'clock on Friday, the 1st of July. This is Breakfast on GB News. It's Stephen and Anne.
And we're live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio. Wherever you are, you can take us with you. Here is what you're waking up to this morning.
Well, the Prime Minister's Deputy Chief Whip has resigned over drinking far too much on a night out, where he says he embarrassed himself and other people. In his letter to Boris Johnson, Chris Pincher said he was doing the right thing by resigning, given the circumstances.
The Prime Minister says the UK is increasing its defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by the end of the decade. This follows criticism of the government's plans to cut nearly 10,000 British troops over the next 3 years.
And this morning, we're live on your doorstep.
And I'm in Tynesyde's most creative corner. We're on your doorstep in Oosburn.
Well, we are the People's Channel, so as ever, you can join in any of our discussion. Please do by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweeting us @gbnews.
Well, our main news for you this morning, and the Tory Deputy Chief Whip Chris Pincher has resigned from government, saying he'd drunk far too much on a night out, this was only on Wednesday, and had embarrassed himself and others.
Yes, the MP for Tamworth in Staffordshire is alleged to have groped 2 fellow guests at the Carlton Club in London's Piccadilly.
Well, in his resignation letter, he told the PM, "I owe it to you to resign." Well, let's talk to former Lib Dem Minister Norman Baker, who joins us on the line. I mean, I guess there's no question he's done the right thing by resigning, Norman, but should he have the whip withdrawn now?
Well, I don't think so, personally. I mean, clearly he shouldn't have done what he did, and he's admitted it. And I think, therefore, the appropriate actions, he loses his position in the Whip's office, which, after all, is a place where authority and ethics are supposed to be governed within Tory MPs. But I don't think we should expect to do any further. But, I mean, that's a matter ultimately for the Prime Minister. I think the concerning matter for the public at large, and indeed perhaps for his Conservative colleagues, is this is the latest of a stream of events. We had Neil Parish watching porn in the Commons. We've had Imran Khan in Wakefield sentenced for sexually assaulting a 15-year-old boy. We've had 3 allegations, I think unproven so far, against David Warburton from Women. And we've had Rob Roberts, who was suspended for 12 weeks for making an unwanted sexual advance. And this reminds me, to be honest, of the dog days of John Major's government, when it was back to basics, if you remember. And I think the issue is not the individual cases, although they are serious in themselves. The issue is what kind of lead is being given from the top, from the Prime Minister. I mean, after all, if you take Chris Pincher, he was actually in the Whip's office before. He then had to reside over a not dissimilar event, and he was brought back by Boris Johnson into the Whip's office again, largely, it seems, because he was supportive of Boris Johnson personally, and therefore it seems to me the Prime Minister perhaps is putting personal loyalty above ethics.
I mean, is it fair to blame Boris almost for this? Or is it just unfortunate that this sort of thing is happening? We've got a lot of viewers getting in touch saying, you know, 1 bad apple, 3 bad apples, 4 bad apples, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the Prime Minister's fault.
Well, I don't know. I mean, people will make their own judgment on that. Clearly, there are individual faults here, but this is becoming a repeated pattern, which does suggest that there is a lead from the top not being given on what is appropriate and inappropriate. And to say it does, in a way, mirror what happened in the last days of John Major's government. It didn't happen under Blair or Brown or David Cameron or Theresa May. This is a repeat of 25 years ago.
Do you think? I mean, I'm quite intrigued, Norman, by the fact that you don't think he should have the whip removed. If this is, as you say, the second time something of this nature has apparently happened with Mr. Pincher, don't you think the party itself should be saying, actually, you shouldn't be representing us as a Conservative?
Well, that's up to them, I suppose. I'm not a Conservative MP or a Conservative Prime Minister, so they'll take that decision themselves. But I just think always that reprisals, if you like to put it that way, or actions taken in response to events should be proportional. And I think he's losing his government position. That's quite embarrassing for him. He'll lose a salary, of course, by the way, because he would have been paid a separate salary as Deputy Chief Whip. And that's quite a sanction. And personally, I think that's appropriate. I was very surprised, to be honest with you, when Neil Parish resigned from the Commons over watching porn. Not in any way defending watching porn in the Commons, which is somewhat distasteful, particularly with female colleagues nearby. But to actually resign your seat and cause a by-election, it struck me as rather extreme. However, clearly the voters of Tiverton and Honiton felt it was appropriate in the sense that they wanted to change parties. But there we are.
What on earth are ordinary voters meant to think of this? I mean, these are people for whom we vote and we send into government, we send into Parliament, and we expect them to do better than this. I mean, what's going on?
Well, I mean, members of Parliament are the same as any other members of the human race, and they will have good people, bad people. They'll have people with high ethical standards and people who don't always adhere to those standards. I think the danger here, to be honest with you, is that the public at large may conclude that all MPs are the same, which they aren't. The majority of MPs of all parties, I suspect, are there to do the right thing and try to behave honourably. But when you have successive incidents like this coming forward, then the public at large may conclude that there's a problem with the whole bunch of MPs. This is what happened with MPs' expenses, which I was, if you may remember, the MP who helped expose through my freedom of information requests, which demonstrated that a small number of MPs were behaving disreputably. But the consequence of that was the public at large believed all MPs were behaving disreputably, which wasn't the case. So I think the damage to the political body politic, if you like, is the more serious consequence of this.
OK. Norman, as always, it's good to talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, I wonder what you think at home. I just think it's incredible that somebody gets voted in as an MP and seems to think that appalling behaviour is acceptable in some way. Yes, he's resigned the whip, but he's resigned being a whip. But that watching porn and I mean, what on earth are they thinking?
I do wonder whether we have the wrong view, though, of these people. A bit like we view politicians and clergy and all these people. We sort of put them on a pedestal, saying they're going to behave in this moral way that the rest of us may not necessarily have to.
They should be worthy of being on a pedestal, shouldn't they?
I mean, as Norman says, they're just human.
No, I don't think that's good enough. I was going to take him up on that, but we didn't have time. But I don't think that's good enough. I think if you vote for somebody to be an MP, they should be better than the average person. They really should. And I think that they should behave in a much more moral fashion. And I can't help wondering, I'm going to be controversial here. I wonder what you think. Well, I think it started, or at least some of it started, when Boris Johnson got voted in, walked into number 10 Downing Street with a woman who wasn't his wife, whilst he was still married. We allowed that. People didn't even blink at it. Surely that's not right. And has it started a period of moral decay?
Ooh, that is controversial.
I know, that is me being very headmistressy. I'm just asking. I remember thinking it at the time. I think his divorce came through
afterwards.
Yes, he was still married to somebody else, moved in with his girlfriend, basically, at that point, into number 10. And I remember thinking, wow, that's the first time that's ever happened. Isn't that amazing that we're not sort of a little bit uncomfortable about that?
Yeah, someone I knew at the time said, if Carrie Simmons walks down Downing Street, I will never vote Tory again. But is that an old-fashioned view?
Yeah, well, maybe it is. But is it a sign of things that have started to happen? I don't know. I mean, I may be very, very old-fashioned about it. You're probably getting very hot under the collar at home. If you are, get in touch anyway. GB Views, GBNews.uk, that's what we're all about.
Yes, yeah, let us know what you think, whether you agree with us or not. But I don't know if I agree with that with you on that one entirely. I know what you're getting at.
Well, you're not a little bit shocked when that happened?
Not shocked. No, I wasn't shocked.
Surprised.
But I did think perhaps he would wait until he was divorced before she moved in.
That's what I thought.
But I don't know. So it's all about you and your thoughts on that one. Now, the Prime Minister, meanwhile, says the UK government is going to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence by 2030. Now, that equates to a further £55 billion by the end of the decade.
Now, his comments come as the NATO summit, of course, wraps up in Madrid, with the Secretary-General of NATO warning that the alliance must stand up to Vladimir Putin.
Well, Boris Johnson's announcements signal a significant increase in the UK's defence budget, but it's also raised questions about his commitment to cutting taxes and other manifesto pledges.
Well, for more, let's speak to Defence and Security Consultant, Brigadier Paul Gibson, who joins us now. And a very good morning. Thanks very much for coming in. I mean, on the face of it, it seems to be extremely good news, but is it enough? And will it go far enough?
Well, I think, the devil as ever is in the detail. I mean, 2.5% by the end of the decade is a significant amount of money. Let's be clear about that. But if you look at its defence spending over the next 2 or 3 years, at the moment, on current predictions, is going to flatline at about 45 billion. And with inflation running as it is, and inflation tends to be worse militarily, equipment and fuel costs and so on really impact on the military. So you could find that actually it is not enough. And don't forget, and you trailed this earlier, we are cutting the British Army by a further 10,000 posts.
Is that, forgive me though, is that still going to stand? Because you can't, it seems absolutely ludicrous on one hand to say we're going to increase defence spending, while still on the other hand saying we're still going to cut the numbers.
Well, I mean, I think this is the really difficult issue now. I mean, what do you spend that money on? And if you look at what's happening in Ukraine, and that's what everybody will be modelling their new force structures on, a lot of it is attritional. A lot of casualties being taken. The Ukrainians taking perhaps as much as 1,000 people being killed and wounded on a daily basis. So you need mass if you're going to do that. Do we have the appetite for that? Are we going to go for much smarter, more agile forces where you're using drones and other capabilities? Look at the vulnerabilities of our platforms like the Queen Elizabeth aircraft carrier, taken out by a single missile. So I think the force structure and how you spend the money is a really challenging thing. I'm an ex-infantry officer, parachute regiment, cutting another 10,000 posts because in the end you do need people, no matter how sophisticated.
Yeah, that seems to be the lesson of this war, in that maybe military thinking before this was it's all down to drones and robots and cyber and everything. But this has taught us that it's a bit more of an old-fashioned ground war that's needed, or it's going to happen.
Absolutely. So you're going to need a combination of both, and you also need to invest in your training and your equipment programs and make sure that you've got lots of people at readiness, ready to deploy. And you can see that NATO are moving that way. But that'll take a long time to deliver.
Mind you, there is NATO now, isn't there? I mean, we're not on our own here. We will always be, and now we've got more countries coming into NATO. Do we maybe need to spend as much individually, and maybe we should be spending more collectively?
Well, yes, we should. I mean, the trouble is we still are sovereign nations within NATO. So everybody wants their own tanks and their own artillery. Yeah. We're never going to get to the stage where you could be much more efficient, which clearly you could be. But NATO stepping up, producing more people at readiness, more forward deployments into the Balkans and further east is going to be a great advantage.
I mean, we do. The thing is, we have an appetite in this country, don't we, for having a stronger defence. It's not as though the great British voter is going to say no, or the majority anyway, are going to say no, we don't want a strong army, because we do.
Yes, we do. I mean, it is popular. You're right, but of course, again, the detail is it's fine to say we're going to put an extra billions into defence. That's got to come from somewhere, and that will be painful to find. It always is. So that's the other side of the coin.
OK, Brigadier Paul Gibson, got to leave it there, but thank you very much indeed. Love to know what you think on that one.
Who would want to be in charge of the purse strings at the moment in government? Where do you decide?
No, but I tell you what, though, we do need a stronger armed forces.
Yes, we do, yeah.
And the numbers are really dropping down. Morale is, in some places, comparatively low. We need to bolster these boys and girls up and give them what they need.
Yeah, we'll get in touch.
That's my view.
Yeah, absolutely. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Here are the headlines then. The Prime Minister is facing calls to expel his former Deputy Chief Whip, Chris Pincher, from the party after he quit following a drunken incident. And Labour, of course, is questioning how Mr Pincher can still be allowed to take the whip and says the Conservative Party is mired, their words, in sleaze and scandal.
A fatal explosion which destroyed a terraced house in Birmingham on Sunday was caused by an accidental gas leak, according to an investigation. It killed a 79-year-old grandmother and left a man critically injured. Homes either side were left with shattered windows and doors blown out.
Russian missile strikes have now killed at least 17 people overnight in Ukraine. Footage released by authorities in Ukraine shows destroyed residential buildings in the port city Odessa and emergency workers looking for survivors. And that's after Russian troops withdrew from the embattled Snake Island yesterday.
Millions of families are having to pay an extra £250 a year on energy bills because of their poorly insulated homes. Councils say 3 million households are paying extra because heat is wasted through walls, roofs and windows. And the government is promising to crack down on so-called dead-end university courses.
New guidance published today says university adverts must include information on dropout rates and the proportion of students who do find jobs upon graduation.
Advert breaks could become longer and take place more frequently, a bit like America. Under new Ofcom plans, the regulator's considering changing the rules because of market developments such as the availability of online streaming services.
Oh, joy.
That could be a bit irritating, because like if you go to the States and put the TV on...
There are more adverts than programme.
Yeah, they show the title sequence and then there's an advert.
Yeah. Sometimes it's very difficult to know what you're watching as well, whether you're watching an advert or it was part of the plot. Get lost.
But we need adverts to pay for things.
Well, absolutely.
You see?
It'd just be a shame if we go quite as far as American television.
Yeah, let's just keep it 3 or 4 an hour. Sounds sensible.
Mm.
But anyway, adverts pay the wages.
Yeah.
So we've got to be
so
careful.
We've got to shut up completely, yeah.
Yes, we should, yeah. Now, talking of money, as we all know, the cost of living crisis is having a major effect on people around the country affording basic goods and, of course, managing their expenses.
Yeah, well, one mum who has been helping families make those little cuts that she says go on to have a really big impact on monthly outgoings. She joins us now.
Yes, Money Mum, Gemma Bird. Good to see you this
Hello,
morning.
lovely to see you.
Hi.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh, our pleasure, because I hope you're going to provide with lots of hints and tips as to what we can do. What is it about these little steps? What are the best little steps that we can take?
Yeah, well, it's sort of my page, I started it, was all about, you know, I'm just a regular girl that's sort of always been really good with my money, and I've always just had the motto that trying to look after the small things really adds up to the big things. And I think that especially now is more important than ever. You know, I do things on my Instagram where it's like saving all these small things to add up. So it could just be looking at your shopping bill, like yesterday, buying your fruit and veg loose instead of buying it in packaging. And I was just showing the cost on that. Sort of things are like 22p per thing. But if you add that up over time, months, years, it all adds up. Like, I did an example on that yesterday, and it was like £171 over the year. Well, that's a really lot of money, like, if we start looking after all these little things.
Yeah. You're right, that. They do package up fruit and peppers, for instance, or something like that. And you end up buying 4 when actually all you ever wanted was 3, and there's always one wasted. Or so you buy loose fruit and vegetables.
Yeah, so
and only
always
buy
look
what
at
you
that.
really want.
Yeah, only ever buy what you really, really want, and things like making a list on your shopping and doing things like that and spending your time to shop and using things like the shopping scanners in the shop, because if you're not great at budgeting or you think, I'm not really sure what I'm doing, when you go around, that adds things up for you, and then you can actually see on the screen, OK, well, I've gone a bit over here, maybe I could change that for that, or look at swapping things out for, like, adding more veg into your diet rather than so much meat. So, like, in a bolognese I did the other week, I put more carrots in that, for example, because obviously meat is expensive. So it's just looking at all different ways and obviously different things we can do to sort of cut down and make our money go further, you know?
I'll tell you what we've got used to. We've got used to the convenience of things. And I'll tell you what, honestly, so expensive. Bagged salad.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Bagged salad.
Well, again, it's more than you want.
Yeah.
Whereas if you just buy a lettuce, it's like 60p or something.
Yeah. It really is scary when you're going around and you're looking at things and you're seeing all these things that they're going up. You know, petrol's gone up, obviously gas and electric's gone up, everything's going up. So it's ways of, what I do is just literally little tricks and tips that you can do. So I do things like Gemma's No Spend Days, where you just have a day where you spend no money. So you go out with the kids, get them in the park, take your drinks with you. And, you know, it's about trying to sort of looking at ways that we can cope in this situation. You know, a lot of us can't do anything about it. You know, I've not got a magic wand, I wish I did have, but it's looking at ways and tips. So it'll be things like, OK, can we get a free coffee there that day? What can we do? What vouchers have we got? What deals are on at the supermarkets? And that's what my page is about. It's about bringing people together from all walks of life and looking for a bargain, looking for a deal, and not being ashamed as well to be open and honest and speaking to our friends and saying, you know, I can't afford to do this tonight. I can't afford to go on this expensive hen do, but I'd love to see you for a coffee. And it's about making changes, because obviously social media is quite strong with that, isn't it? You always think people have got everything, people are doing so well in life. But I think at the moment it's really, really important that we're showing the other side as well online.
I tell you what, some of it, I think, is just down to looking at the ticket prices, isn't it? I was one of these people, I always used to buy good bread, and you just grab a loaf of bread, oh, that looks nice, and then, because they're all sort of about the same price. Then I discovered the supermarket's own bread that was maybe not be quite as nice, but it's £1 cheaper.
Exactly. And you can freeze bread as well, so never throw it away. Freeze bread, get it out, leave it to defrost for a couple of minutes, or just pop it in the toaster. So you can never, ever, ever throw away bread. And do things like, if the bread is going to go off that day and you've got the yellow sticker, as my mum always used to call it, you know, in the supermarkets, buy it and put it in your freezer.
Freeze it.
You can, and Google things like, what can I freeze? What fruit and veg and food can I freeze? You'd be amazed at how much stuff you can freeze and stop the waste. So things like that, get them freezer bags, they're brilliant. And then you can, I was doing things like, you know, like lemons and limes, cut them up if they're going to go off, slice them up and then put them in the freezer and things like that, because it stops food waste, because food is so expensive, right? And so everything that we
and it's frankly wicked to waste food.
Yeah,
isn't it?
it's
really
just
wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can freeze milk as well, which I do because I only have skimmed milk.
Yes, me too.
It only ever comes in enormous cartons and things. So I bottle it now and freeze it as well. So I've always got some spare.
Yeah, you can freeze so much stuff. It's it's brilliant. There's so much stuff you can do.
And I guess actually, if you're looking to cut down on fuel bills as well, do a big cook. And if you're doing a bolognese or something like that, do a big one. So you're using everything all at once and you're only cooking once. Then.
Yeah, well, I was saying things like using your slow cooker, using your microwave, not running your oven, exactly as you said, bulk cooking, freezing your cooking, boiling your kettle, putting the hot water into a thermostat for the day, so you're not thermoflask, whatever they're called. Doing things like that so that you're not using all these things, like making sure when the heating, you're turning it down 1 degree, you're washing on a cooler wash. I know all these things are like, OK, but it's just about sort of ticking them off and doing what
you can. I remember talking to somebody about detergents and when you use, even when you're just using liquid detergent to wash up, but particularly when you're using it in the dishwasher or the washing machine, they sell us, that's why they sell us things in, this thing, because we don't need you don't even need half that much to do a proper wash.
Really?
Yeah. We all waste, we use too much detergent and it's far more than you ever need, even to do one big wash. You don't need the whole pod thing, or whatever they call them.
And it's like dishwashers, people always whack them on before they're filled up. It's like, wait till they're filled up. And things like use your eco button on, like your dishwashers, your cars have them now. Or everything that you can use an eco button on, use that, because that will save you money as well.
Yeah, love it. Look after the pennies and the pounds. Look after
exactly.
themselves. That's very good.
Yeah.
Gemma, really good to see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I think we'll be having you back for more tips and hints.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Good to see you. Now, talking of eco things, as Gemma was talking about, what about recycling? Do you recycle the right things? Well, got some interesting questions coming up.
Is there any point in recycling?
You do wonder.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
This is Breakfast with Stephen and I've just had a message from my mother, but from 7:10. So I don't know what we were talking about. And she just says, I agree with Anne.
Oh, good.
But about what? I've no idea.
That was... Oh, do you think that was when I was talking about Boris?
Was it? Oh, I don't...
Walking into number 10.
Oh, the marriage thing.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, interesting. Well, at least
there you go,
I'm
mother.
one supporter.
My mother backs you all the way. Anyway, time for your sport this morning. Paul Coit is here. Good morning.
And by the way, you forgot your sandwiches this morning. That's nice. That's lovely. How are you? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good. Good. How are you?
Very well. Lots of excitement going on with sport right across the board, mainly tennis. We have 4 players that are going into the next round, which sounds like not many, but really for us is
not the
good.
ones we thought would. But...
I know. What do you make on that? So obviously there's no Andy Murray and also no Emma Raducanu, but Katie Boulter beat Karolina Pliskova. Now, Karolina Pliskova, she got to the final last year, and now Boulter, I mean, it's like, I don't know whether it's the same where you have players that you just don't want to play because she's beaten her twice now in the space of a couple of weeks. So she's now through and to the next round, which is
great. And, of course, she caught the public imagination by saying in her speech afterwards that it was for her gran, who sadly died 2 days ago. Got everybody crying for her there.
I know.
But didn't she do well? And wouldn't her gran have been proud?
Oh, my goodness me. Yeah, of course. I mean, she's come back from injury as well, and she's doing marvellously well. Heather Watson as well. She's through, so she's going to be playing. And then we've got 2 men left. We've got Cam Norrie, who... Although most people would think that the British #1 would be Andy Murray, it's not. It's Cameron Norrie. So he beat Diego Schwartzman, who's the 12th seed Argentinian. Another great result for him. It's kind of flying under the radar as well, as far as that's concerned.
Going to make it a very interesting Wimbledon for us, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we mustn't forget Liam Brodie as well.
Yeah. Look, I've got to mention...
Yes.
Because my dad, he's a very keen cyclist, incredibly fit, does several hundred miles a week, even in his 77, I think he is.
Wow.
He's very fit. But for my youth, I had to watch, because he always recorded it on the videotape, every stage of the Tour de France.
Love the Tour de France.
So I've seen just about every single stage, because Dad always had it on the telly.
Do you know what? It's funny you should say that.
It's
funny you should say that, because I think a great name to the Tour de France. You've got like Eddie Merckx, Greg LeMond, and then we've got Bradley Wiggins, and one name that is not a cyclist, but the greatest name, and celebrating his 50th anniversary as well, commentating on the Tour de France, which your dad would love, is Phil Liggett.
Phil Liggett. I've known the voice of Phil Liggett all my life.
Well, you can now see the face of Phil Liggett as well. How about that? We've got Phil, who's live from Copenhagen for the start of the Tour de France, which begins today. Morning, Phil.
Good morning to you all. I've been listening to the programme with great joy, yes, and good luck to your dad, too.
Listen, it's great. And firstly, congratulations, 50 years of the Tour de France. I've got to ask you, is there much change? Because I guess it's a man on a bicycle against all the elements is what it's all about. But how much has changed over the years?
Well, I'll tell you, it's true. People say, why do you go and follow the same sporting event for 50 years? And the answer is because you never see the same event twice. The Tour de France has matured, of course, and it started back in 1903 when you were pushing your bikes up over the big steep roads and the unmade roads. Now, of course, we passed through the era of typewriters when you couldn't hear yourself think in the press rooms. The Colombian journalists had to pump coins into a phone box to do a live radio show to Bogota. It's all become streamlined, fast-moving, and so is the cycling too. And 2 years ago, we had the second youngest winner ever in Tadej Pogacar. In 1904 was the guy that was younger than him, Henri Cornet. Since then, Pogacar's won again, and he's the hot favourite to win this time round too.
The great world sporting spectacles, isn't it? The Tour de France, and it captures imagination, especially more so probably over the last few years here, Phil, because we've had winners, haven't we? And we've had successes here. And also, when we look at someone like Mark Cavendish, who unfortunately is not going to be in it, breaking that record last year with 34 stage wins.
Correct, and we're very sad Mark isn't here. It's a political thing within his Belgian cycling team. They're taking the top Belgian sprinter instead. He's very fast, and he is as fast as Mark. We'd have loved to see Mark come and take the sole record because he's joined with Eddie Merckx with 34. It's not going to happen this year. But the race has changed completely. It's big money spinning now. Denmark here is the capital of world cycling. People ride bikes here as a matter of fact. There's 2 bikes equal to every member of the population of Denmark, which is quite enormous. It's a population of about 6.5 million people, and they've got 13 million bikes. and it's very, very eco-friendly. Everything is in the way of living a healthy lifestyle. There's no pollution here in Copenhagen at all. The water is pristine and clear, yet to Dockland. And the Danes have been planning this for 12 years. They started 10 years, so in 22, they finally brought it to realisation. And we might have a British winner. I'm still hoping that Geraint Thomas will come back and do what he did in 2018 and win the Tour. He'll be up amongst it, I'm sure. We'll know a bit later today because we start with a time trial, and the whole of this city is closed down, believe me, just for a bike ride.
Well, I remember when it was in London, and like you say, and I'm sure you won't mind me mentioning this, that when I did send you a text yesterday, and I did say, how the hell's Denmark? And you put, it's too many bikes. And for Phil Liggett to say that, I think is incredible. Finally... I
was being killed on a bike yesterday, walking across the road, than I did by being hit by a motor car. There was hundreds of them.
I'm sure they went by and went, oh, sorry, Phil. So I'm sure everybody knew who you were. And finally, one more, and this is the yellow jersey, and of course there's the green jersey and the spotted jersey. For those that are new to the world of cycling, can you just give us an example and just tell us why they are there? We know about the yellow jersey, but what about the others?
Yeah, well, the yellow jersey is because the Keep sponsor newspaper used to print on yellow pages. It was introduced into the Tour in 1919 because people didn't know who was leading the race. And so they put the leader in a yellow jersey. Then came the green jersey because the sprinters complained they couldn't climb mountains, so how could they ever win the Tour de France? So they gave them their own competition, which is to be consistent on the daily stages, and so they gave them a green jersey as a point competition. And then they introduced a King of the Mountains, and to know who he was, they introduced a rather bizarrely red-spotted polka dot jersey. It looks like the rider's got measles. And then we also recognised the best young rider under 26 years of age. He gets to wear a white jersey, and that's scored exactly like the yellow jersey is the highest placed of the young riders in the Tour de France. Those are the competitions. I always refer to it as the most expensive laundry line in the business.
Brilliant. And you know what? And for your 50th anniversary, I think there probably should be a King of the Commentators jersey, which, Phil, it should be the Liggett jersey as far as we're concerned. Many congratulations on 50 years. Enjoy it. We can't wait to see it get underway later. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you.
Wow.
The great Phil Liggett.
I didn't know that about the jerseys. I mean, I knew about the yellow jersey. I didn't know there were others and what the reason was.
Oh, yeah, King of the Mountains.
It makes it more interesting to watch then, doesn't it?
There you go.
Spot the jersey.
That was for you, Anne, that one. That was for you.
You can sit down with my dad and watch every
and they go for go on tandem. Yeah.
Paul, you had a tandem. Paul, thanks very much indeed.
Have a great weekend.
We've got lots more still to come, including the papers in just a couple.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We're trying to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
7:36, morning to you. Now, according to research carried out by the Labour Party, the value of unpaid work in local communities carried out by offenders has fallen by £40 million in the last 5 years.
Yeah, now Labour say they've developed a new system to help tackle that, known as the Community and Victim Payback Boards.
Yeah, well, how would that work? Let's talk to Shadow Solicitor General Ellie Reeves. Good morning to you. I mean, to lose £40 million worth of work in 5 years is a lot. So what would you do?
These figures really are quite shocking. And this is the work that offenders do in the community to pay back the community. But it's just not working because we've seen a massive reduction in the number of hours that people are doing. What Labour would do is set up these community and victims payback boards to make sure that the work is being done, but that also involves victims and the local communities so that they have a say in what things offenders are working on in their community to improve their local communities, so that offenders are giving something back and so that the community can see that justice is being done.
It is a lot of money to sort of allow to slip through our fingers, isn't it? We'd love to talk more about that, but can I ask you, since you're here with us this morning, what do you think about the latest resignation from the Tory party, at least the resignation from the Whip's office of Chris Pincher?
This is a Conservative government completely mired by sleaze, and it just isn't good enough. You know, we had 2 by-elections last week, one because a Conservative MP was convicted of child sex abuse, and another because a Conservative MP was caught watching pornography in the House of Commons chamber. Standards in public life have got to be higher than this, and Boris Johnson has got to get a grip of it. It feels like he is just moving from one crisis to the next, and all the while it means that he can't deal with the very real problems facing the country, like the cost of living crisis that people are really, really concerned about.
You as MPs, you and your colleagues on the Labour benches, do you hold yourselves to a higher standard, a higher moral standard than the rest of the country needs to?
Well, I think when you look at the Conservative Party, it looks just like one thing after another. You know, every week there seems to be another MP caught up in a scandal. The Conservative MP for Somerset and Frome is currently suspended following sex and drug allegations. It's really, really important that MPs do uphold the higher standards in public life. And we're just not seeing that at the moment from the Conservative Party.
Yeah, Ellie Reeves, you didn't really answer the question though, because it's all well and good throwing allegations and of sleaze at a party where there have been a number of issues. But what about it means you've got to hold yourself to a higher standard, don't you?
Well, we do hold ourselves to a high standard, and there's a new independent complaints process in Parliament, and I think that's really important. But there is scandal after scandal at the moment, and that's not coming from our side.
Well, no, but the government is probably under greater scrutiny than maybe the case for the shadow government, as it were. But, I mean, quite apart from that, I mean, what is the reason for it then? I mean, you say it's happening within the Tory party, but why would it be happening there?
Well, I'm not sure that the government would be under any less scrutiny than the Labour Party. There is this independent complaints process that covers all MPs, and all MPs, I think, are held to a high standard. But this isn't just about high standards. You know, the story today is a government minister who has resigned because of his behaviour, and this falls far below the standards that you would expect of a politician from any political party.
Ellie Reeves, good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. Appreciate your time. So that's what the Labour Party thinks about all of this. What about the Conservative Party? Let's talk to the Secretary of State for Wales, Simon Hart. Morning to you. And I know we've got other issues to talk about this morning, which we will come on to, I promise you that. But in terms of Chris Pincher...
Don't worry, but thank you, yeah.
Should he still be a member of the Conservative Party? Why hasn't the whip been withdrawn?
Well, I think this only came to light, don't forget, at about 8 o'clock last night. So it's early days yet in terms of how the Chief Whip and others decide to proceed, ascertaining precisely what the facts were, making sure that people who felt exposed to the particular story get properly looked after. There's quite a lot. There's quite a lot of moving parts to this which need to be resolved during the day. So I think it's. I hesitate to try and sort of second guess or prejudge, what may or may not happen as a result of all of this.
Yeah, but it's interesting. I mean, everyone deserves. I personally tend to think most people deserve a second chance. He's already had a second chance. He resigned following this something similar in 2017. Now it appears to have happened again.
Well, his reappointment, by the way, and it's important to stress, his reappointment was approved by the Proprietary and Ethics team in the Cabinet Office, as you would expect. And so I think sort of trying to sort of look at this in a sort of cumulative way may be a little unfair on Proprietary and Ethics and others who go through very diligently go through their duty to make sure that when people are appointed, they're appointed with this, if you like, independent approval. So, but my first reaction with all of this is always one of sadness, sometimes really rather than anger, because so many people are affected by this. Clearly, massive misjudgments appear on the face of it to have been made, and I think our first priority, rather than turning this into a sort of party political discussion, which it sounded almost dangerously like it was about to be, that we look after the interests of people who've been adversely affected by this. They must be and will remain our absolute first priority, so that anybody in Parliament for any party who feels that they have ended up in one of these very unfortunate positions has an independent grievance procedure they can go to, and they can expect to be heard, as I say, anonymously and independently. And that, for me, seems to be the priority that we should be addressing, rather than necessarily try to use this as an opportunity to, let's say, notch up a couple of political goals. That sort of sounds and feels to me a bit unedifying in a very difficult situation.
Well, it is unedifying, isn't it? The behaviour that we are seeing from a string of MPs, whatever party you might want to say they come from. What can you possibly say this morning that will restore ordinary people's faith in the people they vote into Parliament?
Well, me standing here alone, I probably, there isn't a sentence or a word that I can use which is instantly going to change all of this and suddenly make everybody feel better about it. We strive with the committees that we have and the bodies that we have, whether they're independent or whether it's a standards committee or the Committee for Standards in Public Life. We are all, and it may sound strange this, but we're actually all desperate to not have this have a reputation hanging around us. But it is, again, not trying to excuse anything. It's a big workplace, 650 MPs, many thousand members of staff, and there isn't a workplace in the land which could say with absolute certainty that these sort of things would never happen. We want to minimise the risk, and above all, we want to make people, we want to make people proud to work here. People love working in this place. It's a fantastic. Most MPs do a really good job and take their standards incredibly seriously, as do most of the staff who work here too. So yes, there are some really sad and unfortunate, very sort of stark examples of where this goes wrong. But 9 times out of 10, it doesn't go wrong. But when it does, I hope that there are measures in place, and we change them all the time. The new independence grievance procedure is something which is quite new. It's still in its infancy. I hope protects people's interests as best we can. But you're right, nobody likes hearing these things. I mean, I would much rather come on here and talk about other stuff, but we have to confront these things when they come up.
Yeah, look, I mean, people want you to get on with the job, whether it's cost of living or whatever it may be, but also, I mean, as you're outlining today, actually quite a big investment in in broadband for schools, which is actually moving forward. Presumably, it's going to be quite crucial. Schools, primary schools particularly, really need to be across this sort of technology, don't they, for the benefit of our children?
Yes, I represent Wales, and this is an England-only announcement. So I sort of feel, I very much hope, in my case, in any way, that we can see Welsh government, in our case, come to the, join us in this particular endeavour. But yes, increasingly we're seeing people's educational chances are enhanced beyond, all possible belief as a result of, the proper technology and the proper infrastructure, digital infrastructure, to make their learning experiences as contemporary and as fun as it possibly can be. And so, yes, you're right. That's in the end. Although I don't criticise anybody for raising the sort of Chris Pincher story. I would love to be talking about that. I'd love to be talking about the military spend. I'd like to be talking about some of the achievements of at the NATO summit during this week. All of those things, and of course cost of living challenges too. And that's what we're here to do. And I think there is a public appetite for us to be able to keep doing that as professionally and as loudly as we can. And as I say, there are these other incidents don't help us very much in doing that.
Secretary of State, we appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
If they want to do that, then maybe that's why they should chuck people like Chris Pincher out.
Well, that's your view.
That's a thought.
Let us know what you think.
Being a bit viewsy today, aren't I?
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. gbviews@gbnews.uk. You have to email in, Anne.
Yeah, I will, yeah. But right now, let's get on with the papers. Here with us, broadcaster Mike Parry and author and broadcaster Nikki Hodgson. Morning. We're starting off with Nikki, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. With that, the climate protesters.
So, climate protesters, not content with gluing themselves to railings, have now moved on to fine art. And there's a picture here of two of them who are part of the... which group is it? It's to do with oil.
Just Stop Oil.
Just Stop Oil, thank you, Mike. They've glued themselves to a Van Gogh painting in Somerset House yesterday.
Oh, well done.
Peach Trees in Blossom.
Congratulations.
I mean, the one thing I've got to say is that at least they're gluing themselves to the frame, not the actual painting, and the frames are not as valuable. But it doesn't really take away from the fact that it probably isn't reaching the people that they're trying to reach, because it just looks like, why are you vandalising a really beautiful painting that's precious to us?
My feeling is just total resentment that these people get away with this, because it says that 2 people have been investigated for criminal damage, but they won't be punished severely for trying to destroy a Van Gogh painting.
Well, I don't think they're trying to destroy it.
It's all very well saying it's the frame, but it's intrinsically, it's a Van Gogh that you're attacking. What makes me laugh is that the guy here is glued to the frame, Just Stop Oil, written on his orange T-shirt. Doesn't this juicehead realise that if you stopped oil, he wouldn't have any clothes? Because oil isn't just stuff that you put in the petrol tanks of cars. Oil is intrinsic to everything we have in the world.
He would argue that we have enough clothes and we could all just wear the things we've already got.
Be wearing
we don't need to make any more.
He may be wearing hemp.
I don't know what he's wearing hemp to me. But what I'm saying is, if you want to just stop oil, that means taking the world back 500 or 600 years. What are you going to replace it with?
Well,
what are we going to do? Go back to horses and carts?
Yeah, but the idea is we've got to move forward, isn't it? We've got to move forward with a different energy source.
They want to stop oil. They say we shouldn't drill any more oil out of the ground on Earth.
Yeah, we should be using other kinds of energy.
The point is that you're talking about it on the telly this morning.
Absolutely.
It's in the newspapers. That's why they do this.
Yeah, but they're empty-headed people because they don't have any alternatives.
Well, that's
it's all very well banging the drum, just stop oil.
That's not always true. I don't know what the alternatives are because I'm not well informed on it, but they do have suggestions of what we should be doing instead. Most of them do. Extinction Rebellion, another group that have lots of other suggestions of what materials we should be using, how we should be living, how we should be using alternative energy supplies.
They think the wind and sunshine can power the Earth.
Well, they do.
It can't.
But they already do.
No, if that was all we had, if all we had was wind and sun, for 9 months of the year, we wouldn't get any solar power.
Well, that's
and for
not
most
true.
of the
That's not how solar
time,
power
we wouldn't
works,
get any
Mike.
wind power because there's only wind power.
Solar panels don't work like that. They capture sun energy and then you can use it later on.
The technology is still a million miles away from supplying our energy needs.
I
And
don't
also,
agree.
another couple of people from this same group did the same thing in Glasgow, right? They desecrated a painting in Glasgow at Kelvin Grove Art Gallery. It's an absolute disgrace. Van Gogh is a thing of great beauty, and he's a genius, and he's brought such grace and brilliance to the world. This lot don't have anything to contribute to the world at all.
You're missing the point. That's probably painted with oil paint.
It probably is. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Very much indeed. Well done, Stephen. Hit the nail on the head, just like that. Well
there
done.
You go. Let's have a quick look at
Bernie Ecclestone.
Yeah. Bernie Ecclestone, I mean, I couldn't believe it. I didn't see it in real time, OK?
No, I didn't.
But he was interviewed yesterday morning. I started seeing the tweets, and I thought I better catch up on this. I mean, I am just astonished. What Bernie Ecclestone was saying was, I'd take a bullet for Putin. I think he's a great man. He's a great friend. He said he's a businessman, and we all make mistakes. Then he said, that guy Zelensky looks to me like he was looking for a bit of publicity. He used to be a comedian, didn't he? Well, looks to me like he still is one. I mean, it was astonishing stuff, honestly. It was really astonishing stuff. And, you know, I've had dealings with Bernie Ecclestone over the years. He's a very wealthy man because he ran Formula One so well. But I simply couldn't believe what he was saying about Vladimir Putin.
Why would he say that?
Well, because...
Is he just being outrageous?
No, I'll tell you why. Because he is completely business-based. And he broke the deal with Putin to bring Formula One to Russia. Do you see what I mean? So he knows him inherently well. They both made an awful lot of money out of it because Mr. Putin is one of the richest men in the world, right? And Bernie Ecclestone's a billionaire. So anybody who Bernie does business with and succeeds, as far as he's good, absolutely. Can't be anything much wrong with this man. But honestly, the things he was saying, he went on to repeat it later, by the way. He was interviewed again about it and went on and on and on about it and wanted to complain. And, by the way, he was sitting in his luxurious palace in Ibiza saying all this whilst having no seemingly careful thought about what was going on in Ukraine 2 days after Mr. Putin put a missile into a shopping centre.
Well, there you go, though. But it's 90-year-old billionaire Bernie Ecclestone not being in touch with
reality, with the rest of the world.
Out of touch,
we're out of time.
Right.
It's a very brief one this hour, but we're going to have longer with you next week.
Excellent.
So there you go. Thank you very much indeed. Time now for On Your Doorstep.
Well, our North East reporter, Rachel Sweeney, is in Newcastle upon Tyne. I don't know where she is right now, but she'll tell us. Hello there, Rachel.
Hello there. Yes, I'm in Walker now, a little corner of Tyneside, about 10 minutes from Ousburn, where we were earlier. And the reason that I'm here is to talk about the movie business. Because one thing the northeast of England is famous for is the films that are set here. In particular, director Ken Loach likes to set his films here. He likes the working class hero vibe that this region has. But how does one get into the films? Well, there's one lady who can answer that question. So let's have a knock and ask. Good morning, Bessie Williams. You are live on GB News.
Good morning.
Can we come in? We have questions. Wow, this is spectacular. Oh, look at this mirror. It's like a slice of Hollywood here in Walker. What an incredible house. You can tell that you're a creative, Bessie. Now, people who are watching this who want to get into the movie business, how do they go about that?
Well, they can join Anyone for TV. We are a casting agency and we train and we sort of have a production side now. And basically our whole sort of vibe is, you know, giving opportunities to people who wouldn't normally have them. I think our creme de la creme was when Ken Loach came up the last time for Sorry We Missed You. We got the leading lady on that, Debbie, and she went to Cannes and she was rubbing shoulders with Robert De Niro, and Victoria Beckham was phoning her up to what dress she wanted to wear.
If a Spice Girl rang me, I just don't know what I would do. Can you imagine? So do you think that representation is important? How important is it to hear Northeast voices on the telly?
It's vitally important. This region suffers a lot with unemployment. It's deprived. Everybody cuts off at Leeds and starts at Scotland. So we have to really try to be resilient and think of other ways how to make money as well, so us as a company can survive. So yeah, we're sort of trying to look, because companies come up here, but we don't have the people, you know, to crew it, which is criminal, to be honest. So everybody comes up from out the area. So we are desperate to try and get some funding to fund that. We train people so that people can get trained from the area.
It's a shame, isn't it? Because there's so much talent here.
Oh, so much. We want to sort of start our own dramas, really, because honestly, we have so many people on our books that are writers, you know, performers, and there's some good scripts going around. But, you know, obviously it's hard to get them out into the big world.
Is it hard being an actor in a cost of living crisis?
Yes. I mean, you know, on the television, you see the same people as well. So I think, you know, directors need to start looking elsewhere because, you know what, there's some... well, Ken Loach is sort of a prime example, isn't he? He sort of looks for raw talent and probably, you know, sort of actors who are seasoned will never work with them, which is unfortunate because that's probably the creme de la creme. So, yes.
So much talent here in the northeast of England and so many northeast voices that should be heard on national TV. Luckily, GB News does listen to that. I'll be back in 1 hour with On Your Doorstep and I'll be going back to Oosburn. Join me for that.
Will do. Thank you very much indeed. I think it's really important to have regional voices on the TV.
Yeah, but I like the kitchen. Full stop.
Very nice.
So many lovely locations as well. Yeah.
Very nice. Look, some interesting views. We're going to go through some more next hour on university education.
Yeah.
Is it worth it or not? Duncan says, apprenticeships, that's all we need, proper jobs in a useful trade. Quite simple, really. Getting a trade was always the thing, wasn't it? Because if you've got a trade, it really does set you up for life. You know, look at...
I've got a mate who went in the end to Oxford to read medicine. But in his gap year, because he always used to take a gap year before he went to Oxford, Cambridge,
oh, right.
He learned how to be a carpenter. He apprenticed himself to a carpenter, built his own kitchen, even though he's a doctor.
See, there you go. That's the way to say it.
I think it's wonderful to have a trade as well, though, don't you?
If you've got a trade, let us know what it is. And we've got much more coming up for you, all the top stories.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
The Tory Deputy Chief Whip has resigned from government following a drunken incident.
Good morning. It's 8 o'clock on Friday, the 1st of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
I've got a horrible feeling last hour I said June.
You might have.
It's just
it's
made
July
me,
the 1st.
It's just made me think that. I might have said June an hour ago.
To rewind. Find out.
Let me know if you've got rewind on your... Let me know. We are live across the whole of the UK, which is why these mistakes happen. On your TV, your radio and online, so wherever you are, you can take us out and about with you. This is what you're waking up to today.
Well, the Prime Minister's Deputy Chief Whip has resigned over what he said was drinking far too much on a night out, where he says he embarrassed himself and other people. In his letter to Boris Johnson, Chris Pincher said he was doing the right thing to resign given the circumstances.
Well, the Prime Minister says the UK is increasing defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by the end of the decade. It follows criticism of the government's plans to cut nearly 10,000 British troops over the next 3 years.
And we're live on your doorstep this morning.
And I'm in Tynesyde's most creative corner. We're on your doorstep in Oosburn.
We are, as you know, the People's Channel. So your views really count. They really matter. They drive what we do here on GB News. So get in touch. gbviews at gbnews.uk or tweet us at GBNews.
So let's start with our top story today. The Tory Deputy Chief Whip, Chris Pincher, has resigned from the government, saying he had drunk far too much and had embarrassed himself and others.
The MP for Tamworth in Staffordshire is alleged to have groped 2 fellow guests at the Carlton Club in London's Piccadilly.
And in his resignation letter, he said to the PM, "I owe it to you to resign."
Well, earlier we spoke to the Secretary of State for Wales, Simon Hart, about how the Tory party is dealing with these allegations.
First reaction with all of this is always one of, sadness, sometimes really rather than anger, because so many people are affected by this. Clearly, massive misjudgments appear on the face of it to have been made, and I think our first priority, rather than turning this into a sort of party political discussion, which it sounded almost dangerously like it was about to be, that we look after the interests of people who've been adversely affected by this. They must be and will remain our absolute first priority.
Well, we also spoke to the Shadow Solicitor General, Ellie Reeves, about what Labour thought about the current situation.
This is a Conservative government completely mired by sleaze, and it just isn't good enough. We had 2 by-elections last week. One because a Conservative MP was convicted of child sex abuse, and another because a Conservative MP was caught watching pornography in the House of Commons chamber. Standards in public life have got to be higher than this.
What do you think? Well, find out what the Deputy Political Editor of The Express, Sam Lister, thinks to all of this. Morning to you, Sam. Is it a Tory party mired in sleaze and scandal, as the Labour Party claims?
Well, it doesn't look good for them, does it? I mean, this is just the latest in a series of sleazy issues that have come to the fore for the Conservative Party. And I think, obviously, there are going to be quite big questions for number 10 now as to why Chris Pincher was put into this role, because, there have been allegations made about his behaviour before. So people will be very keen to know why that they were looked over and moved on from, and he was put back into a very senior position.
What do you think is the reason that so many MPs, I mean, mostly men, get themselves into this position? They're voted in by their constituents. It's a very, high position, and he held an even higher position. And yet they make these, well, to call them huge mistakes is an understatement. They behave appallingly. What's going through their heads? Can you reason it?
Well, where there's power, there's always bad behaviour, isn't there? That's certainly true, and I don't think that's just a Conservative Party problem. That goes across all the parties. They've all had their own issues. But obviously, the Conservatives are the party in government, and they seem to have had the most issues at the moment, and it is very difficult for them. And obviously, Boris Johnson, he's just landed back in the country after 8 days abroad at various international summits, which have gone pretty well for him. And then he lands back straight into this. It's more domestic woes.
Anything that can be controlled by sort of the party hierarchy. I mean, there's allegations being made, and obviously parties like the Labour Party saying, well, the buck must stop with the Prime Minister and what have you. Well, is that fair?
Well, it's very hard, isn't it? Because obviously MPs, they are elected by their own constituents. They're answerable ultimately to their own local constituents and voters. So, they're not employed as such in the same way that you or I might be. But that said, the Conservative Party, it sets the culture. The Whip's office sets the culture. I guess the difficulty here is he was part of the Whip's office that does look after behaviour in the party, and that probably really that's where that makes it difficult, doesn't it? Because he was obviously part of the team that is supposed to set that tone and culture.
Yeah, surely the person who really sets the tone and culture inside government is the Prime Minister. So maybe we should be looking to him about all this.
Yeah, and obviously the Labour Party this morning, they were straight out of the blocks to make capital on this. They have said that they're disappointed with the way this has been dealt with by the Prime Minister. I think he believes that because Chris Pincher resigned over the issue, then that's the end of the matter. But obviously many other people think that this should be investigated fully and disciplinary action taken and things to go further. So you will see Labour certainly pushing this issue. But obviously, I'm sure we will have other Conservatives come forward throughout the day to say, actually, more should be done about this. It's not like the whole Conservative Party is happy when MPs behave badly because they're all doing the same. There are so many people in the party who are well behaved and just getting on with the job, and they are filled with despair when these stories emerge. So I think there'll be pressure from within the party as well for more action to be taken.
Just briefly, I'm intrigued by the fact we spoke to Norman Baker earlier on, obviously former Minister for the Liberal Democrats, and I thought he would come out with a line similar like that, but he didn't. He said, well, this is enough. This should draw a line under it. Shouldn't have the whip withdrawn. That's over the top. It's an overreaction.
Well, I mean, it's very interesting that he says that. I think there's sometimes, and obviously he's not around in the everyday thick of it anymore, but sometimes there is an element with parties that they don't want to go too far because it's only a matter of time before they get their own problems popping up, and then their words come back to haunt them, don't they? So, and I think, bad behaviour isn't limited to one party.
I think we've lost you.
We've lost the sound, Sam.
We've lost you, Sam.
Not to worry. I think you probably got an incoming call or something, because that's what it does. It's put you off. But never mind. Good to talk to you, Sam.
Yes,
Thanks
great.
very much
Thanks
indeed.
very much indeed.
I find that all the time, actually. You're on with someone.
If something else happens on the
and
computer.
it just cuts your mic.
Yeah, don't know why.
But she's doing it on her phone then.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
There you go. Lesson learned.
Mind you, it's wonderful, don't you think, nowadays, that we've totally come to accept, video phones, basically. Whether we're on our laptop or we're on a little phone or whatever, we see. And have you seen so many people actually do interviews from their car?
Yeah, but it's the stuff of science fiction. Remember 2001: A Space Odyssey, Arthur C. Clarke classic, and the movie was a phenomenal Stanley Kubrick movie, beautiful. But in that, there's a video phone.
Yeah, when they're on the spaceship.
Yeah,
he's just talking to his family at home.
But it's a huge screen with a phone and all the rest of it, and it's. And that's what they thought it could be. That was,
But I think if you told us all 20 years ago that we would be regularly video phoning each other, and we don't even call that anymore, do we? But that it was absolutely the done thing, you could just immediately just talk to your family in Australia, we wouldn't have believed it, really. No. And now and it, funnily enough, took the pandemic to make it really common. I think before the pandemic, I think we all went, people like me, I certainly went, I don't know whether I can handle that. It looks a bit complicated, a Zoom call. And now you just do it all the time.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Technology is a wonderful thing.
Oh, yeah.
Now, let's turn attention back to more serious matters.
Yes, I suppose we should.
But mind you, it's interesting because it's about technology in a way, because when it comes to the defence of our realm, they sort of think that technology was going to be the way forward.
We've been told for years, haven't we, that the next war will be different. The next war will all be cyber, or it'll be a financial war, or, it won't be boots on the ground and people getting blown up anymore. But events have proved that to be really rather wrong, haven't they?
Now, it's sort of in the wake of all that and what's happened with Russia and Ukraine that the government here has said it's going to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence by 2030. That equates to a further £55 billion by the end of the decade.
Now, the Prime Minister's comments come as the NATO summit wrapped up in Madrid, with the Secretary-General of NATO warning that the alliance must stand up to Vladimir Putin.
So the PM's announcement signalled a significant increase in the defence budget, but it's raised questions, of course, about whether you can do that and still cut taxes and other manifesto pledges.
So for more on this, let's speak to former commander of UK and NATO Chemical, Biological and Nuclear Forces, Colonel Hamish de Bretton-Gordon. And it's lovely to see you again. Thanks very much for joining us. On the face of it, this announcement sounds like really good news, except it's not as if our armed forces have got enough money or troops or men or equipment at the moment.
Well, that's true. And you make some very perceptive comments on the type of warfare that we're going to fight. And really, since the end of the Cold War, we've been configured to fight what we call counterinsurgency against terror groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And that requires technology and not so much men and women in the armed forces. What we're seeing in Ukraine is the type of warfare that we thought was gone. Tanks and aircraft and men and women fighting in the streets hand to hand. And in order that we can fight that, and the Chief of the General Staff, General Patrick Sanders, said last week, we need to reconfigure so that we can defeat the Russians. In order to defeat the Russians, we do need to restructure. We need more men and women in the armed forces. We probably need more and slightly different equipment. So this raise in the defence budget is key. And I hear what you say about taxes. I absolutely understand the cost of living crisis, but the defence of the realm, defence of this country, is the government's #1 priority. And the cost of living crisis mostly caused by the war in Ukraine. So if we can get that over with, hopefully we can get things back on track as soon as practically possible. But it will require a strong and determined defence force, and it needs to be properly funded.
It's interesting because we have gone through decades of a relatively peaceful time globally, certainly as far as the UK is concerned, comparatively speaking. And so perhaps it's understandable that the way the armed forces have been reconfigured as a result. Do we need to look at it and say, much as we have a nuclear deterrent, do we need, literally in terms of numbers, an armed forces deterrent, even when times are good?
Absolutely. We need a balance of forces, and the nuclear deterrent has kept the peace since the Cold War. And the nuclear deterrent is preventing Putin diving for the red button at the moment, particularly as he does worse and worse. But the conventional deterrent, as you say, is absolutely right. Perhaps if NATO had been more demonstrative over the last few years and actually had people deployed forward, and was very much more confrontational, or certainly showed that it was powerful, then Putin might well have thought twice about invading Ukraine. But he thought NATO and the West would do nothing because we did very little with all his activities in Syria and elsewhere. And we misjudged it in NATO. We need now to reset so that Putin and others know that NATO will defend its countries, and we will not allow naked aggression like that we've seen by the Russians in Ukraine.
I mean, whenever a government announces more money into defence spending, there are often voices that say, oh, we shouldn't be spending our money on this. Do you think maybe the public attitude towards that might have changed since the Ukraine war?
Well, I certainly hope it has. And obviously, we don't want to pay our taxes. We want to have an affluent and growing economy. But what we've seen in Ukraine hopefully galvanizes everybody to realize that, this can be a very unstable world, and you just can't sit back and roll over. It is crucial that this country has a strong defense so that we can move forward. Sadly, there are dictators and mad people like Putin around. And we need to show them that they can't get on and do their malicious activity unchallenged. We need a strong defence, and we've got to pay for it. It's all about the UK's resilience and the security of the 70-odd million people who live on this island.
OK, Colonel de Bretton-Gordon, good to talk to you, as always. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I wonder if you would agree with that, whether your attitude has changed. Maybe if you were somebody who, up until now, has thought that it's a terrible waste of money to be spending so much money on a nuclear deterrent, on our armed forces. Has this war changed your mind on that sort of thing? GB Views at gbnews.uk.
Yeah, let's bring you up to date with some of the headlines then. And the Prime Minister is calling on the London Mayor to get a grip on the Met Police after a watchdog criticised it for systemic failures, including a backlog of child abuse cases. The Prime Minister said Sadiq Khan should set targets for the force and hire the right commissioner to lead it.
A fatal explosion which destroyed a terraced house in Birmingham last Sunday was caused by an accidental gas leak, an investigation has found. The blast killed a 79-year-old grandmother and left a man critically injured, while homes either side of it were left shattered with windows and doors blown out.
The government's reportedly considering cutting VAT in a bid to curb inflation and tackle the cost of living crisis. According to an article in The Times, Steve Barclay, the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, suggested a temporary reduction in the 20% tax rate could ease bills for millions. Temporary is the upsetting word.
The government is promising to crack down on so-called dead-end university courses. New guidance published today says university adverts must include information on dropout rates and the proportion of students who do find jobs upon graduation.
Actually, it's causing a bit of concern, that university story. Jennifer's been in touch. Morning, Jennifer. She says, me and my husband are watching from Ipswich this morning. We are really worried about our daughter leaving for uni, dreading what the future holds for her in the current climate. But it's also dreadful when your only child is leaving the nest. We are both dreading September.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
But bear in mind, it could be the time of her life. Don't dread it.
Oh,
it's...
yeah.
If you do a good job as a parent, then letting your child fly the nest.
It's a thing you have to go through, I'm afraid. Vince says, morning, Stephen and Anne. I love watching the show from windy Colchester. My son has done linguistics at university, but he completed a BA, a Bachelor of Arts, not a Bachelor of Science. He is definitely on the right path, but he says he was told that his dream career as a speech therapist was unattainable with his current degree. Hang on, he's done linguistics, meaning he now has to decide whether to switch what he wants to do in the future or start another degree from scratch. The degrees aren't the problem. The universities running them are.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, though, Vince, when you get into the job market, as your son will find out, to say you've got a degree is often enough for some of these things. I mean, if you've got... I'd just keep on doing what he's doing and then... Mind you, I'm not a careers advisor.
No, but get into a job, because the most important thing is your career, to be able to prove that you've started a job and maybe do something voluntarily that proves your... I can't understand why a degree of linguistics wouldn't help him in a career as a speech therapist.
No.
I would have thought that would be absolutely
It makes no sense.
degree.
And you do sort of think most people in the speech therapy side of things, looking at the CV and seeing linguistics, would actually go,
Would
yeah, fine.
That's a bit of common sense, yeah.
Yeah, a bit of
Jane says, morning, Stephen and Anne. My son is doing an aerospace engineering degree. Apprenticeship. Degree paid for, no debts, 4 years on-the-job experience, exceptionally good salary and holidays.
Wow.
See, that's what we need, degree apprenticeships.
I tend to agree. There's a lot of that going on at, not Vickers, what's it called nowadays? VSEL.
British Aerospace...
BAE Systems. Up in Barrow, it was always Vickers, the Vickers shipyard. So a lot of youngsters there now are going in and doing paid apprenticeships, whereas if they're on the right sort of apprenticeship, they can get a degree as well.
Yeah. That's the best of both worlds, isn't it?
I mean, you're signing yourself away for 5 years or so.
Yeah, but you're getting experience while you're doing it. You're getting trained and you're getting the experience, and very often you'll be able to put that on your CV straight away, that you've actually been doing the job.
Maybe you don't get to move away from home, which is part of the experience of university. I don't know. But I mean, it's a very expensive way to move away from home.
It really is. Earn first, yeah. Anyway.
Let us know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Now, the crisis charity Hestia has warned that domestic abuse refuges are struggling to support victims because of the ongoing cost of living crisis.
Now, according to research, demand for their spaces rose by 30% from January this year, while those who can leave the refuges are simply unable to afford the move.
Well, to help explain what's going on, actually, and where the resources are available for victims of domestic abuse, is Jo Tilley-Riley, who's a domestic abuse prevention manager. Hello there, thanks for joining us. It's almost a sort of perfect storm in a way, isn't it? We know that during the pandemic, there were more and more cases of domestic abuse. And at the same time now, we've got a cost of living crisis, which is making the very places that those people ought to be able to go to difficult to maintain.
I think that's exactly right. You know, in the pandemic, as you say, we saw that escalation of domestic abuse for many victims and a huge increase in demand for the refuge spaces that Hestia offers. And in fact, we opened 2 emergency refuges just to try and meet that demand during that time. And there's lots of evidence that, you know, economic recessions, those pressures, they put more pressure on those households where domestic abuse already exists. And you do see escalations in domestic abuse, it becoming more violent, more frequent. And that's what we're beginning to see. As you were saying, we saw a 30% increase in the number of women phoning Hestia and trying to get a space in one of our refuges since January. And it's only the early days of the cost of living crisis. So we're really concerned about that trend. And at the same time, you know, when a woman and often her children arrive at one of our refuges, often they literally arrive with the clothes on their back. They've left everything behind. They have nothing. And they might stay in our refuge for 6 months or so, but then they move on and they will move into their own flat or their own house. And because they have nothing, they have to buy everything when they move into that house, you know, furniture, pots and pans, everything. And the research that we've done with Loughborough University has shown that that's now going to be £5,000 more expensive for a woman and 2 children moving out of refuge. So it's really hard.
I mean, how much of that is provided for by councils, by government grants, because there's got to be a support network there. You can't expect these people who've, as you say, walked out with nothing, to within 6 months be able to afford thousands of pounds worth of gear.
So there isn't a established scheme for women moving out of refuges. So typically we would either support women to make applications to local grants, or we actually raise funds from donors. And so we have a pot of money that we're able to support women, you know, to buy white goods and to buy those basics as they move into their next accommodation. But there isn't a system for that to happen anyway. And so we're going to have to increasingly rely on donations and the generosity of the public to enable us to support women to move on, because you can't have a mum and 2 children who've experienced all of that trauma move into a house where they haven't got a bed or they haven't got, you know, the basics. You know, that can't be what we expect.
Well, that's what I was wondering. I mean, you say you opened up 2 emergency centres just post-pandemic to cope with what the pandemic was causing. But how much does it cost to set up a refuge?
I mean, it's not cheap to support somebody, because obviously you're paying for the accommodation, but also in a refuge we would provide specialist refuge workers to work with the women, to work with them on their trauma. Hestia always fundraises to make sure that we have children and family workers to support the children, to do all of that work.
But I mean, food, fuel, you know, as you said, bedding, everything like that must cost a fortune to even set one up.
And the main infrastructure for supporting refuges is provided normally by local authorities, but there just weren't enough. You know, it's always been the kind of Cinderella service of the funding world, and there just weren't enough bed spaces. So we did have to raise, you know, hundreds of thousands of pounds to be able to open those emergency bed spaces. And we'd hoped to be closing them, but actually now we've made a commitment to keep them open as we see these numbers rising. But again, we're going to be reliant on donations to enable us to do that.
What's happening in terms of what they call CSR, corporate and social responsibility? Because a lot of companies do that, and you look at companies like Amazon that have made a fortune out of the lockdown. Understandably so. We all use it. It's been incredibly convenient. They make a lot of profit. Are there companies like that are now perhaps approachable and saying, look, put your hand in your pocket. If, you know, a couple of £100,000 is nothing to you, it could help these people out?
I mean, I would want to give credit to some of the businesses that are already doing a lot in this space. So, for example, we've done a lot of work with Uber over the years, and they offer free rides to our refuges for women, you know, who can't afford to get to the refuge. We've done a lot of work with some of the banks like HSBC and TSB to provide safe spaces in their bank branches, to offer free setup for bank accounts. Even Royal Mail offers a free service for women in our refuges to do mail redirect, which is actually a really expensive service.
Very important.
And really important. And and so there are businesses that are really stepping up into that space. And it's important that as a whole community we become part of this response. So absolutely. But there's just so much that needs to happen in this space. So much.
It's a scary situation. Jo, it's really good to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for helping us to raise awareness.
It astounds me that in this day and age, this sort of thing is still going on.
And it needs our awareness constantly, doesn't it? So that you can help. And if you need any support yourself, you can contact the National Domestic Abuse Helpline. You can call for free and in confidence, 24 hours a day. It's 0808 2000 24/7. 0808 2000 24/7.
Awful. Some things just shock me. There you go. Look, we've got much more to come for you, including, in a moment, a masterclass.
We all need
it. If you want it. If
in
you really want
recycling.
it. Yes.
We all need it.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. Good morning to you. It's 8:29. There you go. Some people have it good here at GB News.
How do you mean?
This studio's cold. Anne's really cold. And so because we've got nothing else to offer, the producer just came in and gave her a cuddle.
I know, and he was lovely and warm. I was going to say he was hot, but I wouldn't be...
No. But that's how things should be.
It is, yes, a nice
Come
cuddle.
and get a cuddle.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I love a cuddle.
Oh.
I'm quite a tactile person, but I do...
can't get off my seat.
No. But I do... Cuddle's nice.
Yes, aren't they lovely? And we missed them so much during lockdown and everything, didn't we? And it's lovely to be able to...
You can't recycle a cuddle, though.
No, and we're asking, how good are you at recycling? I am dismally poor at it. But the rules change from place to place, don't they? What's recyclable in my sister's house on the south coast is completely different from mine.
Yeah.
So we argue about it all the time.
No wonder it gets
and do you
confusing.
wash out bottles, before you put them in the bottle thing?
Mm.
And is it useful to do that? Because surely you're using energy and hot water and everything else. I don't know what you should do all the time.
Well, no. I mean, it does get very confusing. Well, hopefully to shed a bit of light on it all is our East of England reporter, Ed Crawford, who's at the CSH Environmental Centre in Colchester in Essex. Morning, Ed. So what do we need to do?
Good morning. Yes, thanks for joining me. Well, funnily enough, I've come to CSH, one of the top recyclers in Colchester or East Anglia, and I'm going to learn about some of the confusion within the recycling industry. And today I am joined by Paul Gregory.
Morning.
So, Paul, can you tell me how much recycling do you do in this facility?
We process around 1,000 tonnes a week here. 95% of that is diverted away from landfill sites, and 75% of that is actually recycled.
Fantastic. Well, that's what we all want. Now, can you tell us, is there anything that the British public can do to improve their recycling?
There is, yes. They can obviously put as much of the recycled products in the waste as they possibly can. They can make it clean, wash it, clean it so that it's nice and easy for us. The more of that we get that's clean, the easier it is for us to salvage.
Fantastic. Well, that's one of the big confusions. People are never or often not sure whether they should clean the milk jug, clean out the jam jars before they put it in. And tell me, is it beneficial if people rigorously separate their food waste from their general waste?
Absolutely. Food waste and general waste should never go together. Food waste is a good resource that we can salvage if it's separated. So they should have a separate food bin. Make sure as much of the food waste can go in there as possible, and also not only when people do this at home, they should also be doing it at their workplace, because people tend to be very good at home, but they're not quite so good at work.
Fantastic. And because you put a lot of the recycling back into businesses and stuff, it's almost like a bit of a circle economy, isn't it?
It is, yeah. The materials here that we salvage can stay in the UK, they go to Europe, they go other places, Far East, all to be repurposed and granulated down into other products.
Fantastic. Well, I guess the most important lesson is if you can at home, if you can clean your milk cartons, your jam jars, if you can clean it out, it helps top recyclers like Paul Gregory get the job done and put it back into the ecosystem, as it were. So I hope you have a good day, and I hope we've busted a few of those recycling myths for you.
OK, Ed, thank you very much indeed. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because there are so many different... It's not bad where I live in that it's sort of paper and cardboard in one and then everything else that's recyclable in the other. But in some places, you have to put the glass in one and the plastic in one, and it just takes metal in another one.
And my council will recycle cardboard if you put it out, but not paper.
Oh.
What's the difference? Why is there a difference? I don't understand it. And I don't know what you do as well when you have those laminated... like a bottle of orange, not a bottle, but a laminated pack of orange juice or something like that. So that is, on the outside, it's cardboardy, isn't it? But on the inside, it's laminated, so that's plastic. How are you meant to recycle that?
Don't know. Maybe it's non-recyclable.
It may well be, yeah.
But I don't know. I just say, and also, I don't know where I read it. It's a year or two ago, so maybe it's out of date. But they were saying all the glass that you recycle doesn't get turned into... You think it's going to be melted down and turned into glass. But it's not.
What happens?
Apparently it's crushed and put into roads. So, I mean, I know it's reusing it, but it's not what I would class as recycling, particularly.
No.
I still think it's going to be...
Well, as long as it has a use, but...
yeah.
So we're driving on little beads of glass half the time, aren't we?
Yeah, on the sort of the undersurface, apparently.
Yes, but... That's a bit of a shocker, really, isn't it? But I've always imagined that it got melted down and turned into glass again.
Apparently not.
Oh.
You see, that was interesting, what Paul Gregory was saying. Of all the recycling stuff they get, 95%, 5% of that goes to landfill anyway. And of the stuff that's saved, 75% of that gets recycled. So what happens to the rest of it? It's not. You think you're sort of putting it in recycling and it's all getting recycled, but it isn't.
I remember doing a radio programme about this, though, quite a few years ago, where we had lots of people ringing in saying, actually, you go to all the trouble of putting your bottles there and your cardboard there and whatever else, and the guy comes along from the council and shoves it all into the same van.
Yeah.
So there you go.
You do wonder.
You do wonder whether it's not box ticking that goes on. Now, but we should be recycling properly.
Friday is bin day.
Yeah, it's changed to Monday now.
Has it?
Yeah, which is very exciting because I have all of Sunday afternoon / evening to think about putting the bin out in time.
Ah.
So I'm rather pleased that it's changed to Monday.
Mine's still Friday. But last night, I put the bins out last night, and all the wheelie bins and things. And so my council's pretty organised with it all, so I can't complain. 4 separate bins out to put, 4 separate big wheelie bins out to put out last night.
What, on the same day you put 4 out?
Yeah, but they come in different... So one comes and gets the waste, another one comes and gets the garden waste.
On the same day?
On the same day, and another one comes and gets it's plastic, metal and glass day today.
So we're only every fortnight, and it's one week it's recycling, next week it's rubbish.
Right.
So you have to be well coordinated. So there's a big timetable stuck on the fridge.
Yeah.
So that I can check the date.
I love the fact that our team, because they want us to stop talking, they've started playing the music bed to shut us off, to say, this is the music that takes us into the commercial break. They're subtle, aren't they?
They are. They're enough about wheelie bins, they're saying, get on with it.
Yes, we'll be recycling all the papers for you in a couple of minutes.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
8:38. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne on your TV and on your radio.
Shall we have a quick look at today's front pages? Yes? We're starting with the Times. We're leading with Number 10's plans to cut VAT to help reduce the tax bill for millions and apparently ease inflation.
The Eye has Theresa May's urges to the Prime Minister to ban trans conversion therapy.
The Express reports on the tragic death of 5-year-old Logan Mwangi, who was murdered by his family despite serious safeguarding concerns.
The Telegraph has more on the allegations of drunken groping by Deputy Chief Whip Chris Pincher. Let's see what Mike Parry and Nicky Hodgson make of the selection today. We're starting with something a little bit sort of lighter, I think. In the Daily Mail, Nicky, posh dogs.
Yes, Gucci for poochies. So apparently there's this trend for extortionately priced dog goods that include things like chaise lounges, collars, an amazing Gucci dog ball that actually has a kind of like top on it that you lift up to serve the pooch. A cloche, thank you. That's the word that I didn't actually remember. Yeah, so, I mean, that will set you back £450 for the bottom part, and for the cloche it's another £610.
So these are people not suffering from the cost of living
These
crisis.
people have got a little bit too much money on their hands right now, I think.
How much is the chaise longue?
The chaise longue is £5,710.
Because my little Ellie's got her own chaise longue, and I made it out of a couple of bits of wood and some old
Which is what we should be doing. I mean, maybe that's what we should be doing, taking inspiration from these designer goods and making the cheaper version.
I do sort of think, and you know, you can't tell people how to spend their money, but if you were even looking at buying a tiny chaise longue for your corgi at £5,710, why not give that to charity?
You've got slightly more money than sense, haven't you?
Yeah.
And I say that as a dog. I've got a dog who I'm absolutely obsessed with, but he doesn't get good things. Also because he wrecks them.
Yeah.
But also, I think it's ruining the mentality of the dog. I mean, dogs are, you know, a bit like humans. They like to earn a living. Dogs like to earn their place in society.
Yes, that's true.
They like to earn their loyalty from their, you know, their owners. And suddenly, you know, giving them all these luxuries and all that. And as you quite rightly say, Stephen, I mean, human beings waste huge amounts of money. A £250,000 watch, you could say, is an excess for a human being. Exactly. But to spend it on a dog who basically just wants to be loved and fed twice a day.
Comfortable,
and be comfortable and have a warm home is ridiculous.
Well, I made Elliot a chaise longue so that she wouldn't sit on my chaise.
Lovely, yeah. Good idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Good idea.
So she knows her place, basically.
Did it work?
No, she still she likes it, but only at night, actually.
Yeah, we've been through about 4 dog beds, so if they'd all been that price, I'd be bankrupt.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, dog just wants a big thing to lie in, doesn't he? You know, we had a...
No, basically, what I found is if you do give them their own posh bed, they still want to come and sit on you.
Right, okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if I laid on the chaise longue, she'd come and lie on it. But
biggest waste of money I ever did was buying a cat bed.
Oh, really?
They don't bother to cats, do they?
Where does Timmy sleeps on your?
Thankfully, I did buy it from the RSPCA, so at least the money wasn't totally
went in the right place.
It was still a total waste of time.
Yes.
Working from home, Mike, in the Telegraph.
Yes, that's OK. This is Jacob Rees-Mogg on the warpath again, OK? He's now suggesting civil servants who refuse to go back to the office could end up losing their jobs. And it's about time this message was given. He's done another tour of offices in Whitehall. His own office, his own cabinet office, has got the highest percentage of people who've returned to work. It's about up to 70%. But half of Whitehall staff are still refusing to get back to their offices. Foreign office staff are the worst offenders, while the Home Office and Wales Office are also largely empty. Now, am I right in thinking there's a world crisis on at the moment? It's in the Ukraine. That's spread out to tensions around the rest of the world in the Middle East with America. So the Foreign Office is a fairly important location where government business has to take place, but it's the least staffed, OK? Still refusing to go back to their offices. Foreign Office staff are the worst offenders.
But maybe they are doing all they need to do from home.
I don't accept that statement for 1 minute. I think teamwork has to involve eye contact. It has to involve people sitting around a desk like this, swapping ideas, offering theories, providing solutions. And I just don't think you can do that on a Zoom meeting or individually from people's homes. And why at home anyway?
But Mike, just to stop you a minute,
Yeah.
I have worked in a fully virtual business for a couple of years now.
Right.
The business has no office and never has had. It's a global business. It's making millions of pounds profit a year. It's in the dating industry.
Yes.
And we've never had an office. So the point is that it is perfectly possible to run a business like that.
I totally agree, but that's a dating business, as you say, and it's all about visual and screens and all that. This is the Foreign Office.
But
And
no,
the Foreign
it's
Office
not. But it's about
with...
personal relationships between the staff members. You can't get anything done on a project if you can't communicate with other team members.
Well, I think
it's about deep personal work.
I think you get things done better when you're all in the same office, bouncing ideas off each other, generating energy within each other.
I feel like that's a very old-fashioned view. You know, the reality is most businesses are moving towards most businesses are moving towards a hybrid model because it works for them, because it's economically viable, it's good for the staff, it's brilliant if you've got kids at home. You know, there are so many benefits to that mixed model. And Jacob Rees-Mogg, yet again, is talking from a position of extreme privilege. You know, this is a man that goes home to his very lovely constituency half the time. So is that making him, you know, not do his job properly?
Well, that sounds like the politics of envy to me. Everybody's entitled to have a nice home, but also can go to the office and work.
His constituency, I said, his constituency office. He actually runs by a hybrid model himself. So why is he criticising this? It doesn't make sense.
Well, the country's in an economic woe, and it's getting worse.
But we're not in economic woe because people are working from home.
How do you know?
But we're not, because it's obviously
productivity's going down.
Taxes.
Productivity is going down.
Productivity is not going down.
We're going to be the worst in Europe soon. I believe it's because we don't go in our office and do our jobs properly.
There were already lots of trouble before the pandemic struck and before people were moving towards a hybrid and work-from-home model.
But it certainly hasn't helped.
What do you think? GB Views at gbnews.uk. Yeah.
We're doing the programme next weekend from Stephen's home.
Oh, are we?
I thought we'd try.
Yeah, good idea. Yeah, why not? Yeah.
You'd be very welcome if the weather's nice. We could do it from the garden.
Oh, we could do it while we barbecue something.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice?
Oh, yeah. Actually, this is beginning to become a good idea. Sorry, Mike.
The germ of an idea will grow.
Absolutely.
We'll do the show. My husband can do the burgers.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
Then after the programme, we can
Fabulous.
watch Wimbledon.
We've only got time for one more, have we? And I hate to do... let's do banned words, Nikki, in the Times.
Oh, yes. So are you a Scrabble lover?
I like Scrabble.
Yeah, I like a bit of Scrabble too. So apparently, Scrabble has kind of gone on the rampage and banned 419 obscene words from the Scrabble dictionary. But some of them are not that obscene. So one of them, for example, and I am thinking carefully, is Jesuit. Now, I thought that described somebody of a holy order.
Yeah.
And apparently that's obscene.
Yeah.
And we're not to use it anymore.
No, that's ridiculous.
Well, I think
holy order, that.
It seems a bit ridiculous to me as well.
Oh.
So people that play Scrabble are up in arms about it, and you know.
People who play Scrabble are always up in arms.
They're always.
they are.
Well, apparently, Anne, you can get 200 points if you use Jesuit.
Can you?
Because
So that
triple and all that.
all that. So that's why people are so upset.
I'm very suspicious if anybody thinks Scrabble is a big thing in their life or a good
I
idea.
tell you what, I play it on the phone.
Yeah.
You can just do it.
Well, that's all right. I mean, if you're on the train or something like that. But people who actually sit down at home with this board and all these white
Good for your brain.
tabs and all that.
Extends off dementia.
No,
I love
no.
it.
They must have very empty lives, these Scrabble players. And apparently they all hate each other as well. It says, you know, there are bitter spats, ruptured friendships and high-profile resignations. So there's a Scrabble war going on somewhere.
How much do you get for spat? Is Scrabble a word in Scrabble?
Oh, I have no idea. What a good question.
No, I don't know.
Definitely need someone to email in about that.
The guy who invented it was a fellow called Alfred Butts, and that's not a word. And somebody tried to use it once. Yes. Sorry?
It's a proper noun, isn't it, if it's a name?
It's Butts.
Yeah, but if it's a surname, it's a proper noun.
Waterbuts.
Waterbots.
Okay.
Well,
yeah,
apparently it's not a word. It says, ironically, he invented it, but it's not a word. So.
Well, that just shows how upset you can get over a word, doesn't it? Because that's upset me now.
Zen is not a word.
What?
No, no way.
Zen? No.
And a Z on the triple must be good.
But if you're stuck with a Q,
Yeah.
QI or QIN or QIS
Is
works.
Yeah.
Gosh, here's the expert.
Yeah.
Quinine? Quinine? It's a good word.
No, but you need a U for that.
Oh, yeah, I see. Yeah.
Oh, it's fun.
Yeah.
I know. I always get beaten, sadly, at Scrabble.
I'm surprised.
Anyway, look, it's time for you two to...
Thank you so much.
Skedaddle.
Yeah.
No problem.
That must be a good
Skedaddle
word.
is a very...
Good to see you both this morning. Mike, Nikki, thank you.
But right now, at 8:48, it's time for On Your Doorstep.
Well, our very own Rachel Sweeney is in Newcastle upon Tyne. Is there fog on the Tyne, Rachel, this morning?
It's beautiful on the Tyne this morning. Now, as we know, Newcastle is a bustling, busy business city. So, of course, right smack in the middle is this farm. I had to bring you here in Ousburn. Ousburn Farm is so pretty. And I've just popped in to see manager Hugh Stolliday. Hugh, how does a farm end up in the middle of Newcastle city centre?
That's a really good question, Rachel. So there's been a farm here for about 40 years. Originally it was started by local residents from Byker who wanted to raise some animals and to grow some fruit and veg, and it's grown into this fantastic facility that we see today.
Do you want to show us around animals here?
Of course, yeah. So we have a selection of farm animals here for the public to come and meet, free to enter. We have Willow the cow here. She's a Holstein Angus cross. She's about 7 years old. Hello, Willow. Good morning.
She's a beaut, but it's behind her. It's Susie, isn't it? Susie the pig is quite famous in the northeast.
The pig down here. Susie is a large white pig. That's her breed. That's not a description. She got famous last year because she predicted the results of the Euro Championships, and she got 5 out of 7 of England's matches right. So we've got high hopes for her for the coming World Cup in Qatar.
Well, we must come and visit before then so we can put our bets on. And over here we have some more sheep. Now, school children like this particular area, don't they?
Yeah, so these are our pet lambs, Rachel. You may know that quite often lambs, so they get bottle fed by the farmer, and we've brought some of those lambs down here to the farm this year, so children over the Easter holidays and beyond were able to bottle feed these lambs and help raise them.
How important is it that there are free attractions in this area for people to bring their kids to at the moment?
It's super important, Rachel. You know, everything's getting more expensive. You know, a family of 4 for an outing somewhere can easily be upwards of £100, and that's a lot of money. So for us, with Newcastle, having a free-to-enter place for families to come and learn about the environment and nature and farming, but also have some fun, is just a great thing for us to be able to do.
How are you able to provide a free facility?
Well, it's not easy. We have a cafe and a shop which brings some extra revenue, but we do depend on grants and donations to help us keep going. We're a small charity. We also do some really important work with adults with learning difficulties and disabilities. We support them here. We keep on going, but obviously for us, like anywhere else, it is hard because all our costs are going up, and you know, we need to make sure this place is here for the next generation of children.
Well, then we should do something to help. So shall we help you feed the little sheep this morning? Are you ready for your breakfast? So do I just chuck this in?
Give it a little shake, get them in the mood. And
I'll ask you to hold the microphone for me.
No problem, Rachel. Good work. We'll make a farmer of you yet.
You heard it here first. I'm leaving TV to become a farmer. Back to you. Thank you for joining us on your doorstep.
Rachel, thank you.
Lovely.
I think you've put more food on the sheep than in the sheep there, Rachel, but never mind.
I'm pretty sure that's not the way to do it.
Fabulous. Oh, lovely. Look, earlier in the papers, actually, just in the papers, we were just talking about working from home and Jacob Rees-Mogg getting furious once again about what's going on in the sort of Foreign Office and the Home Office and all that sort of thing. Does he have a point? I don't know. Well, interestingly enough, our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, who's going to be on your TV with the briefing at 9:30, you've been having a chat to Mr Rees-Mogg again, haven't you?
That's right. We met up in North East Lincolnshire yesterday, where we had a wide-ranging conversation on various elements of his brief. And there were some interesting points that he brought up that hadn't been said before by government ministers. And
what was he doing up there?
Well, he was actually up in Newcastle earlier that day. He's a busy man. He gets around. He was up in Newcastle for a civil service conference and was coming on the way down to meet up with a Member of Parliament, Martin Vickers, who had invited him to his constituency association, but also there looking at the port around the Humber, which is becoming a free port, of course, and the opportunities economically that will deliver for the area. But we managed to speak about a number of things, and particularly one of the things that I wanted to raise was about inflation. Because so often we've heard from the government how they're dealing with the effects of inflation. They tell us about the money that they're giving to people and basically the redistributive help that's going on there. But rarely do they talk about what they're doing to tackle the causes of inflation. And we don't hear so much about it because it's a very hard thing to do. But for the first time yesterday, Jacob Rees-Mogg admitted to me that the government is pursuing a policy of what they call fiscal tightening. So not just monetary tightening with the Bank of England raising interest rates, but also fiscal tightening because spending by the government is not rising by as much as inflation is, and that's deliberate. So that they're not growing government spending, they're keeping government spending restrained. In fact, in real terms, government spending falling slightly, so that they're not inflating the economy up. Now, the government hasn't wanted to admit this because, of course, it's tough for people.
Yeah,
it means
they won't like the sound of that.
In real terms, less money going to public services. But it is one of the ways in which inflation can be dealt with. Jacob Rees-Mogg outlined the government's three-pronged approach for the first time. The Independent Bank of England, of course, raising interest rates. The government having some fiscal tightening there, not raising spending in line with inflation, but also, and this is his brief more specifically, supply-side reform, changing the way that regulations are done in this country to make things cheaper, getting the government out of the way in several areas in order to try and ease the cost of living that way. So that's the only sort of positive out of those three-pronged approach, because the other two are going to be pretty hard for people.
But in terms of fiscal tightening, and experts have said it is the way forward before. But as you say, it's going to pinch us, and particularly those at the lower end of the spectrum. One would imagine. But how quickly can it have an impact?
Well, economists generally say that anything done to try and get inflation down takes perhaps a year to actually come into effect. But what Jacob Rees-Mogg was telling me yesterday was it's actually inflation in and of itself that is the thing that hurts people on low incomes the most and hurts pensioners the most as well, people with fixed incomes. Inflation is a really pernicious evil. So the remedies to it are tough. And very often when we hear the Prime Minister and the Chancellor talk about what they're doing, they talk in very positive terms. They talk about all the money that they're going to be giving to people. They talk about how everything's going to be fine. Well, for the first time yesterday...
They talk in long terms as well, though, don't they?
They certainly do. And they talk about how we're going to get back to growth, not next year, but perhaps the year after. But for the first time yesterday, a senior government minister admitting, really, that there is fiscal tightening that is taking place and that's deliberate. And I think that's relatively significant.
Yeah, right for him, though, a lot of people might say, wouldn't they?
Tom, thank you very much indeed. And you can see that interview with Jacob Rees-Mogg on the briefing from 9:30 this morning. But don't go anywhere. We've got all the top stories coming up, and we're talking to former royal correspondent Nicholas Owen.
Morning, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather update. It's more of the same today. Some sunshine around, yes, but most places seeing some heavy showers as well. A bit more of a breeze blowing today, which means the showers will move through a little faster. Keeping our eye on this weather system, that's going to bring some wet and windy weather to the northwest this evening. High pressure is trying to build in from the south, so perhaps not quite as many showers here today compared to yesterday, but it's a fairly wet start across the northeast. That rain slowly pushing its way across the Northern Isles. And then look at that, the showers just break out almost everywhere by late morning. Heavy downpours likely, particularly this afternoon over eastern England and northeast Scotland. Some downpours could cause some problems. A lot of spray surface water on the roads for the Friday evening commute, but not too many for Wales, southwest England this afternoon, turning drier too for Western Scotland and Northern Ireland, until here that next weather system moves in, bringing a band of quite intense rain and some really gusty winds picking up through this evening. That band of wet and windy weather pushes into Scotland overnight and then slowly spreads across England and Wales into the weekend. Ahead of it, we'll see some clearer skies developing over eastern England. Temperatures may drop down to single figures in rural areas. On to the details for Saturday, and we're looking at this band of rain crossing England and Wales. Some uncertainty about the exact timing, so if you've got plans, keep up to date with the forecast. It does look as if East Anglia and the southeast will stay mostly dry tomorrow with sunny spells, and it should turn a bit drier in the afternoon for Wales and western parts of England. But this line of rain will be fairly slow moving over the Midlands, northeast England, and then Scotland and Northern Ireland. Again, just that mixture of bright spells, but also some fairly heavy showers. More showers to come on Sunday, mostly though across the north and the west. It does look as if things will turn a little drier and brighter as we go through into next week, with temperatures also just starting to rise a little in the south.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go? Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
The Tory Deputy Chief Whip has resigned from government following a drunken incident.
Good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock on Friday, the 1st of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
And we're live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio. Wherever you are, you can take us with you. Here is what you're waking up to this morning.
Well, the Prime Minister's Deputy Chief Whip has resigned over drinking far too much on a night out where he says he embarrassed himself and other people. In his letter to Boris Johnson, Chris Pincher said he was doing the right thing by resigning, given the circumstances.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister says the UK is increasing its defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by the end of the decade. Now, this follows criticism of the government's plans to cut nearly 10,000 British troops over the next 3 years.
And in showbiz is Taylor Swift about to say "I do" and marry her British acting beau. We'll have the latest from our showbiz reporter, Stephanie Tetchy.
Love her frock. We are the People's Channel, so as ever, you can join in any of our discussions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweeting @gbnews.
Morning Tim, is in Copenhagen watching on his laptop because we are available online on various sort of YouTube and all sorts of things. And he's come out with my brother for the Tour de France and loved when you were speaking to the legendary Phil Liggett about the race, just building anticipation. I mean, Phil Liggett, who Paul Coit was talking to earlier on, I mean, he is as legendary as some of the cyclists. Amazing to get him on the show.
Caro says, morning to you two on a damp day in Carlisle. We've got a lovely day once the kids head off. We're going for a drive over to the Lake District for a brisk walk, but we love getting our day started by listening to the pair of you. Excellent, thanks.
Sally says, I live in Uxbridge, which is the PM's constituency, isn't it? There is still strong support for the Prime Minister, despite these sleaze scandals. We love watching the show. I don't know why you associate us with sleaze scandals. I don't know what that's
I'm
about,
sure you do.
Sally. It's the only place we seem to get modern, balanced reporting now. Well, we try our best, Sally. But it's interesting looking at those sleaze scandals because...
To our top story.
Yeah, there is another one that's sort of erupted for the Conservative Party. The Tory Deputy Chief Whip, Chris Pincher, has resigned from government, saying he'd drunk far too much. This was on Wednesday night, and had embarrassed himself and others.
Yeah, he's the MP for Tamworth in Staffordshire, and he is alleged to have groped two fellow guests at the Carlton Club in London's Piccadilly. So in his resignation letter, he told the Prime Minister, I owe it to you to resign.
Well, earlier we spoke to the Secretary of State for Wales, Simon Hart, and asked him how the Tory party is dealing with these allegations.
First reaction with all of this is always one of, sadness, sometimes really rather than anger, because so many people are affected by this. Clearly, massive misjudgments appear on the face of it to have been made, and I think our first priority, rather than turning this into a sort of party political discussion, which it sounded almost dangerously like it was about to be, that we look after the interests of people who've been adversely affected by this. They must be and will remain our absolute first priority.
Well, we also spoke to the Shadow Solicitor General, Ellie Reeves, about what Labour think about what's just happened.
This is a Conservative government completely mired by sleaze, and it just isn't good enough. We had two by-elections last week, one because a Conservative MP was convicted of child sex abuse, and another because a Conservative MP was caught watching pornography in the House of Commons chamber. Standards in public life have got to be higher than this.
Well, let's talk to Conservative peer Lord Robert Hayward, who joins us in the studio. Good to see you this morning. Look, first and foremost, about Chris Pincher directly. In terms of, and I know you want to sort of stay away from some of the direct elements of this, but in terms of how this has been dealt with from a sort of HR perspective, if you like, he said he did something wrong and has resigned from his position. Is that enough?
I don't know. And I don't think anybody other than those who are directly involved know. I used to be an HR director in industry, dealt with disciplinary codes, tragic circumstances, and everybody wants to speculate under these circumstances. And I do think it's unfortunate that people should start saying, well, it's one party or another. But everybody wants to deal with these circumstances, but it has to have the set process. There are set out in Parliament in exactly the same way as there was in industry, procedures for dealing with these things, the complainants, the individuals affected, etc. We don't know what the backgrounds are.
No, we don't, but people watching at home are voters, and when they vote an MP into Parliament, they surely have a right to expect better behaviour, don't they?
As I say, I'm not going to comment in any way because so often when I've been dealing with these things, I worked on an industrial site in the Midlands before I became an MP, literally thousands of people. And I dealt with the disciplinary cases on a day-by-day basis. And people have to make a judgment when they go to the ballot box, but they should make the judgment on the day they go to the ballot box, whenever that may happen to be, rather than you and I heard about it 9, 10, 11 o'clock last night. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's not the first case, is it? That's the trouble.
No, it isn't. But as I say, each case under each circumstance has to be dealt with on its own basis.
But taking a step back then and away from any specifics here, we just heard from the Labour Party there, that there needs to be better standards in public life. And do you think that we always used to think that, I was saying earlier on to Anne, whether it's members of Parliament or peers or
clergy,
policemen, whatever it may be, that they're on a bit of a pedestal and you expect a slightly different behaviour. Has that slipped over the years, do you think? Do you think there still should be that element of thinking these people should behave better?
I think probably what you've actually got, excuse me, is social media and the media in general are much more intrusive. I think if one goes back, President Kennedy, when I was young, was on an absolute pedestal. What do we know now about him? What do we know about Winston Churchill and his drinking habits and all those sorts of things? So I think life has become much more intrusive and one judges in a different set of circumstances because of that. But it still remains that one has to stand back, look at these things and allow the procedures to work their way through.
Certainly get what you mean about social media and also the rolling 24-hour news agenda, isn't it? I mean, you make a headline. I mean, and this guy resigned the night, or almost the next morning, wasn't it? So, I mean, and to a certain extent, you can say he responded to the fact that it becomes news so quickly now that actually people are under a greater scrutiny.
They are, and it is difficult under those circumstances. I'm not complaining, but when I was first invited to come on this programme, we were going to discuss defence spending and all sorts of other things. Because events have changed, it's right that we should have the conversation now. But as you say, it is a rolling 24-hour programme. You are under obligations to be current, be up to date, and be investigative at the same time.
And it would be wrong for us not to ask.
Absolutely. It is absolutely right that you change your agenda because what you see. But equally, it is right for people to say, whoa, hold on a second. Let's look at these things in a balanced way. Are the procedures right? If so, then this is how we'll handle it.
Yeah. Lord Hayward, good to see you.
Good to see you.
As always. It's an interesting point when we talk about it in a lot of aspects, but when it comes to this sort of thing, when people say, well, it was never like that in my day, what's happening? There's this sleaze going on there. And as Robert pointed out, it was... perhaps it's just we didn't know about it.
We didn't know. Yeah.
And times have changed with all of that, and camera phones and all the rest of it now.
It's changed everything else.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's an interesting and probably a very valid point, I should think. It is 9 minutes past 9. Let's just bring you up to date with some of the headlines. And the PM is calling on the Mayor of London to get a grip on the Met Police after a watchdog criticised it for systemic failures, including a backlog of child abuse cases. The Prime Minister said Sadiq Khan should set targets for the force and hire the right commissioner to lead it.
A fatal explosion which destroyed a terrace house in Birmingham last Sunday was caused by an accidental gas leak, the investigation has found. The blast killed a 79-year-old grandmother and left a man critically injured, whilst homes either side were left shattered with windows and doors blown away.
The government's apparently thinking about cutting VAT to curb inflation and tackle the cost of living. According to an article in The Times, Steve Barclay, the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, has suggested a temporary reduction in the 20% rate, which could ease bills for, well, all of us.
And the government is promising to crack down on what they call dead-end university courses. New guidance published today says that university adverts must include information on dropout rates and the proportion of students who do find jobs upon graduation. Now, the Armonico Consort is a critically acclaimed UK choir, renowned for its inspiring concerts and imaginative singing education programme.
Well, to commemorate the Platinum Jubilee of the world's longest reigning monarch so far, the ensemble will recreate the highlights of the coronation service of Queen Elizabeth II. It's a unique concert performance.
And it's going to be narrated by the former royal correspondent and presenter Nicholas Owen, who joins us now. Good morning and welcome onto GB News. Hello.
Well, good morning to you. Good morning.
Well, tell us all about this, recreating all that wonderful music that we didn't hear an awful lot of and most of us never ever saw. It sounds quite a monumental thing.
Well, listen, do you know that, first of all, we have to get something out of the way. Not a confession exactly, but a revelation, if you like, to a lot of people. I am old enough to remember the coronation. I was only a wee lad, of course, but we were one of the houses in the road, the one house in the road that got the telly in, and I can remember seeing the scenes from the coronation. Actually, the one thing I do remember very clearly, not so much this, I mean, that's wonderful, isn't it? Look at the Queen there, the young Queen, just about to get into that golden coach. Of course, it's all in black and white. And that's the point. The one shot I remember is the golden coach going by in the pouring rain, because it did rain awfully that day. So that's to get that out of the way, first of all.
What was on the music? Nicholas, what was on the music list? Was Parry's I Was Glad in it? No, it wasn't, was it?
I Was Glad, of course, yes. Zadok the priest.
Zadok, of course.
Zadok. That's the one, isn't it? Zadok the priest. I mean, and to perform that in a impressive way has got to be one heck of a task for you lot.
Well, it's a task for the singers and for the musicians, for the brass and for the organ that's played as well. My job is just to narrate. Listen, I have the simple job to do, don't I? I mean, I actually love singing personally. I have to sort of rein myself in from not taking part, because we've done a couple of these already. We're going to do another one in London on a Sunday, and there's a couple more to come. One in Harrogate on the July the 15th. Really looking forward to that. My wife's a Yorkshire woman, so sort of going home there. But the singing is incredible. I can't tell you. I've heard it a couple of times now, and I've been to all the rehearsals and everything else, but it still gives me, chill's the wrong word, isn't it? Thrill, I suppose, as I stand there. And at the very end, we do a terrific build-up to 2 verses of the national anthem. And I'm one of those, I guess the national anthem, I've heard it so many times as we all have, doesn't always move me. We get a bit tired of it, don't we? But when the Armonico Consort singers, under their wonderful leader, Christopher Monks, when they sing it and the audience rise up, and they always rise up and they always try to join in, it's tremendous.
Nicholas, I can't get over the fact that you remember the coronation and here we are celebrating the Platinum Jubilee. I mean, all you can say is, you've done well, but hasn't she done well?
Hasn't she? Hasn't she? I mean, that is the point. You have to remember, of course, her mother lived to over 100 as well, so there's longevity there. But as I always say, when you think about the Queen, she's healthier lifestyle than her mother, to be honest. Let's be honest about it. Queen Mother was terribly fond of, well, you know, why not? The good life and her drinking and so on. Queen is much more abstemious in every way, much more careful. But she is terrific. I mean, at her age, to carry on doing these engagements, to be seen by loads of people. She was out and about yesterday, in Scotland yesterday, wasn't she? It's a colossal achievement by any human being. Oh,
How
they
many
should look
years
at
were
that.
you,
Yeah.
Nicholas, how many years were you royal correspondent? And what was your favourite moment?
I divide that into two, if I may, Anne. I was royal correspondent of ITN from 1994 until 2000. Of course, in the middle of that was 1997 and the death of Diana, Princess of Wales. So that was the sort of big, unavoidable, tragic story. My best moment, though, was, well, I was very lucky to meet the Queen on several occasions. And the best moment was to actually stand and talk to her aboard the Royal Yacht Britannia, moored in Cape Town Harbour during a royal tour of South Africa. And I found myself, just she and I, having a natter after a momentous and extraordinary tour, Nelson Mandela and all of that sort of thing. And that had to be the best moment. And listen, Anne, I have to tell you this, and the two of you, I managed to bag 5 what they call GCSEs from school. They call them GCSEs now, don't they? I only got 5, and that was all the education I ever had. So I said to myself, I did actually get a chance to think, hey, you're talking to your sovereign here, which is marvellous, and she's fantastic. We were both so interested in what was going on. It was just a conversation about, the tour and what had happened. But a little bit of me just said, not bad for a lad who left school with 5.0 level.
Yeah, no, it's not bad at all. Nicholas, it's good to talk to you this morning. As someone who was a humble producer at ITN in the 90s, and used to see you from afar, it's very nice to be able to speak to you.
Oh, can I ask you one more thing? Because obviously it was probably before the days where we all took selfies all the time. So you can't have stopped the Queen and said, could I have a quick selfie? But did anyone else manage to snap you and the Queen together? Have you got any photograph at all?
Oh yes, I have. I can't give you the best one. The best one by far was this, that in the early 90s, ITN opened its new building, which they occupy today in the Gray's Inn Road in London. And I was asked to sit at a desk, a bit like you two are doing now, with a camera rigged up in front of it. And I was told I was to tell the Queen how to read the news, because that's actually my main job, was actually to be a presenter of the news. They got the royal correspondent job for nothing, I always told them. Anyway, so the Queen came in and she stood just behind me, if you can think of it, over my right shoulder, accompanied by a man called David Mannion, who Stephen, you will know very well.
We know, know David well.
And you will know him. And he said, ma'am, this is Nicholas Owen, first time I've met the Queen. But I had my earpiece in with a lead, which tells us what the director's going to shout at you, as you both know, and everybody knows. And my microphone was also plugged in. So it was a bit awkward, really. The Queen was kind of here. And I sort of got around as far as I could. And then I had to say to her, ma'am, I'm sorry, I can't turn around anymore, because if I do, I will pull the whole lot over. And I used a word beginning with B and ending with Y. And the Queen laughed, and a cameraman, photographer caught the picture on the other side.
Lovely.
It's the back of my head. It's the back of my head, and the hair's a different colour, but it's the Queen.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, you'll have to email that in, Nicholas, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Look, thank you. Great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. And if you want to catch Nicholas with the Monaco concerts, Coronation of Queen Elizabeth II, it's this Sunday in London, then in Harrogate, 15th of July, and the Clandelo Music Festival on the 23rd of July.
Do stay with us. Our showbiz Steph is here with all the entertainment news, including why Taylor Swift could be walking down the aisle very soon.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Let's talk marriage with Stephanie Tecci at 21 minutes past 9. Good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. I'm still waiting for my ring.
Oh.
They couldn't get one big enough.
I know.
So Taylor Swift is getting splashed.
Yeah, the wedding bells could be ringing for Taylor Swift and her boyfriend Joe Elwyn. The Sun are reporting today that they secretly got engaged a few months ago, and he proposed with a ring which she only wears indoors, because I'm sure if she was wearing it outside, the paps would have seen it. They are notoriously a very private couple, so they're not going to be making no big announcement. There's going to not be no magazine deals for the wedding, which I find quite...
that's nice.
Yeah, I find that quite refreshing, because I think, you know, when you're a celebrity, you kind of feel like you're, you know, public property in that sense. And these two, I think they've been together for 5 years.
Well, they stand a better chance, frankly, if they keep their private life private.
110%. And, you know, I think Taylor Swift has also learnt, because she's dated a lot of British men. Calvin Harris, Harry Styles, Ed Sheeran, Tom Hiddleston, and a lot of those... I know, she has been.
Some pretty good A-listers.
Well, that's what's inspired most of her old music. But all those relationships were very much in the public eye and the limelight. So I think Taylor knows, keep it quiet, and that is the secret to a long-lasting relationship.
Oh, good for her. Good for her. He's an actor or something, isn't he?
Yes, he is. He's been in shows like Conversations with Friends. He's a really good actor, and he's always said that he doesn't want to talk about their relationship because it feeds the beast, i.e. showbiz reporters like us, who want to know all the gossip. So,
Tell us about this David Bowie.
Yeah, so it's 50 years since his album Hunky Dory, and to celebrate, Barbie have released a limited edition of his doll, of a doll of him, and it's all 70s glam. I wish we had a picture of it, but 70s glam, but it's only $50.
Oh, there you go.
There we go.
It looks like Cilla Black.
Look at that. That was a previous one, a Ziggy Stardust one, but this new one is available for $50 from places like Amazon, but apparently it's nearly sold out. Yeah.
It is. It's a Cilla Black doll they put in a suit.
Yes, that's right.
Well, that is extraordinary.
I love it. I want to buy it
collector's
myself,
piece, though, isn't it,
definitely.
really?
So if you're a Bowie fan, make sure you get your Bowie Barbie.
If you've got a doll collection, it needs to be there, doesn't it?
Are you a fan of Barbie? Did you have them when you were younger?
No, I had Tressie. You won't remember Tressie.
Tressie?
Tressie was the one whose hair grew.
Oh.
You pressed a button in her stomach, the hair all came out.
Oh, I love
And then you could style it.
Oh,
Yeah.
that sounds cooler.
What happens if you cut it because you reload her hair?
No.
Oh.
That was something they hadn't quite thought of, and a lot of people did.
Oh, right. Now, I'll tell you something light and cheery. Steve Carroll is doing bedtime stories.
He is. So we've had a whole host of celebrities, like Harry Styles was the last person to it, but Stephen Carroll, the American comedian, he is the next person who's going to be reading a CBeebies bedtime story.
He'll be good.
He is going to be very good. He's going to be reading The Eyebrows of Doom by Steve Smallman, and this is about a pair of mischievous eyebrows, which I'm sure we can all relate to at some point. But he says he's always loved reading for his kids, and so this is going to be such such an honour for
He would
him
be
to
so
do it.
good.
Yeah. And I've just been surprised about all the cool names they've been managing to get to do it,
Well,
you
they
know?
can. I think stars line up to do CB because
Yeah.
they believe in it, don't they?
And you're never too old for a bedtime story.
Oh, no.
I'm always
Right.
listening,
Yeah.
always listening.
Are we running out of time?
We are
Yeah,
running out of
aren't we?
time, I'm afraid. Look, Stephanie, thank you very much indeed.
Always a pleasure.
You've mentioned mischievous eyebrows. Just see my nephew Thomas, who's got like a couple of slugs.
Oh,
Face.
there's
There you
Frida
go.
Kahlo.
My old mate,
Frida Kahlo, yeah.
my old mate Nick Owen could make them go independently up and down.
Oh.
Eyebrows, yeah.
I
Did
wish I could do that.
Weird.
We'll get him on Zoom tomorrow.
Serious
to see.
Olympics, yeah.
Stephanie, thank you
Lots
very
of
much
love.
indeed. That is it from us for this morning. We're back tomorrow morning. Well, I'm not actually. I'm
No,
off.
you're not. Yeah,
You're
I am
in.
though. I'll be back here. And Tom Harwood is up next with the briefing.
Morning, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather update. It's more of the same today. Some sunshine around, yes, but most places seeing some heavy showers as well. A bit more of a breeze blowing today, which means the showers will move through a little faster. Keeping our eye on this weather system, that's going to bring some wet and windy weather to the northwest this evening. High pressure is trying to build in from the south, so perhaps not quite as many showers here today compared to yesterday, but it's a fairly wet start across the northeast. That rain slowly pushing its way across the Northern Isles. And then look at that, the showers just break out almost everywhere by late morning. Heavy downpours likely, particularly this afternoon over eastern England and northeast Scotland. Some downpours could cause some problems. A lot of spray surface water on the roads for the Friday evening commute, but not too many for